All right, we're back. Jimmy House, thank you for making it, man.
Yeah, dude, thank you for having me.
Is this the first? It's not the first time you do a podcast, right?
No, I've done a bunch.
You've done a bunch.
Yeah.
And was it your own podcast or you have?
No, like guests on podcasts and stuff like that. Yeah.
Nice. Like guests who hosted you?
My
like,
biggest podcast that I've been on is Mark Bell, the Power Project. You know that video that went viral with Nicky Rod saying Gordon's on steroids?
Yeah.
I was on that podcast. Like not that podcast, but the same production. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they had me on.
So isn't it crazy that I heard about that podcast. That's crazy, and I saw the blood test results.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, Gordon did him a big favor, huh? He did him a massive favor.
Yeah, it was huge.
It's insane.
It really was.
Like for Nicky Rod to look that healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and then to be like, what was it, like diabetic, borderline, almost.
That's what I saw in the results. Yeah. When I saw the video that they posted.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I see he's making adjustments now.
That's what it looks like. Yeah. I don't know too much about Nicky to really like have an opinion, to be honest, but it was interesting seeing all that unfold for sure. I'm sure it was great on your guys' end.
I basically used to almost live with him, Nicky Rod. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
In Puerto Rico, we almost like lived together.
Oh, that's cool.
We were in the same apartment complex, and he shipped the car from the U.S. to Puerto Rico.
Uh-huh.
So I'd always catch rides with him in and out.
Oh, nice.
And then like before training, you guys want an acai bowl? On the way back, you guys want an acai bowl? So I mean,
he likes to eat.
He likes his sweets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and he used to eat a lot of protein.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. You gotta eat your body weight in protein. Gotta eat your body weight. But I feel like there's also quality of protein that matters too.
Yeah.
It's not just the. I mean, I don't know. I'm no expert.
I would say so. I mean, like all calories aren't the same, right? So when it comes to protein and everything, I think, I myself am a big fan of like steak and ground beef and everything else, but I still have a good mixture of like eggs and turkey and fish and stuff like that. I do think it's important because the proteins are going to do different things in your body. Mm-hmm. And if you stick to one protein source, although I do think ground beef or red meats can be very beneficial when it comes to like athletic performance and strength training and stuff, I definitely think it's healthy to have a mixture. Absolutely.
So you don't eat like red meat every day?
To be honest, I do now with myself trying to get stronger for powerlifting, but it's not the majority of my meals. I basically have like a ground beef meal, I'll have a turkey meal, I'll have an egg meal, a whey shake, something to that effect, and just kind of keep it mixed up. But a lot of what's come out about saturated fats is in a lot of ways been disproven in regards to like its health effects on the body and everything like that. My girlfriend's a nutritionist, so she kind of updates me on everything they find. So, although I don't think it's good to eat all red meat, like too much of anything is bad. Yeah. I do try to include it because I do find a lot of benefit, honestly, like in my energy and my performance in lifting and my performance on the mat. I am a big fan, to be honest.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Do you do blood works as well?
No. And that's actually, I was talking to Dan about that the other day. I want to like start doing that for sure because I need to get a better gauge of where my like test levels are and everything, just so that like when I do start declining, I can actually see that. So like whenever at the time for me as a natural bodybuilder and a natural or drug tested powerlifter to make a decision to do TRT or something like that, I have a better gauge of it. I've just been so ignorant to it for so long that I was like, I don't need it. I don't take anything. So it's like, but at the same time, it's 27. I just turned 27. I think it's beneficial to have an idea of where your numbers are at, because if there is a decline, then you know how to strategically approach that.
100%, man.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
When was your birthday?
It was last Sunday.
Last Sunday?
Yeah.
Fuck,
thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Last Sunday, like a couple of days ago or the week before?
So it's 16th.
What do we? Okay, so it was a week before.
Yeah.
I was gonna tell you, it coincided with Eid. like the Muslims, they celebrate at the end of Ramadan. It's perfect. What'd you do? Did you in uniform for birthday? Or?
We went to that Estancia steakhouse. Dan showed me it. I'm sure you've been there.
Yeah. No, I haven't been there, but I'm just laughing that Dan introduced you to that place.
He took me there like my second day here after moving, and dude, it was so good. They have a place back home called Fogo de Chao. I don't know if they have that here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just found it to be way better, like more options, and I thought the meat was better cooked and everything.
No way.
I liked it better.
Estancia better than Fogo de Chao?
I liked it better personally. Yeah,
nice.
Maybe just experience, but
Dan is like their biggest enemy.
Really?
Yeah, they see him and the waitresses, they start sweating. And
they literally knew. He knew all of them. Yeah, he knew all of them. He's like, I was like, do we have to wear anything? He's like, dude, I got it covered. Don't worry. And I was like, you'll see what I'm talking about. And then everybody knew him by name and everything.
Dude, Dan,
yeah,
Dan, I love Dan, man. He's a special case. So yeah, man. Same with me. The blood test, I did one. I faced a guy called Jonatas Gracie.
Oh, I know who that is.
I faced him, I think, end of February, and I felt that squeeze. I mean, he got banned 3 years. He got tested at the IBJJF World Championship, No-Gi Worlds, a couple of months ago.
I saw that.
And then he got banned. But I didn't know for a fact that he was on anything, but I felt it firsthand. I'm like, you know what? Let me get let me get checked. And then, so I mean, the testosterone, my testosterone level, it was good. It was good in range. It was TSH or something. I definitely regret not having someone more like legit look at it.
I see.
You know what I mean? I should have someone legit at it. But one thing that struck me is my cholesterol was a little bit high.
Oh, okay.
So from like eating a lot of red meat, but also after the match, like my knee popped. I had to actually pull out of Enigma. But my knee popped and I was eating a lot of like red meat, but like not clean. Like I'm talking like brisket, tacos. Yeah. I wasn't training a lot.
Right.
And so I felt like my blood like kind of got a little thick from all that fat.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, making adjustments, but it's smart. You can't make decisions based on one blood test. I feel like you need to compare. You need to have two and then to compare.
I think that's really smart. The last time I had like a cholesterol check, the person put on the cuffs incorrectly, and it said like I was on the brink of a heart attack.
What?
It was like at peak condition for myself.
But he was wrong.
Yeah, the thing was wrong. Yeah, so I think it's important, like you said, to have multiple tests. For one, if there's an outlier, if something just being incorrect, but two, just to see what the mean is of multiple different tests. I do think that's a smart approach.
Smart.
Yeah.
So Jimmy House. That's the actual name. It's not because you're Jack that they call you House, huh?
No, I appreciate it. No, it's my actual last name. Yeah.
Yeah? It's what? It's American name? You're American?
Yeah. My dad's white. My mom's Filipino. Her maiden name's Navarro.
Navarro?
Yeah.
That's Filipino?
It's like Spaniard, but they kind of took over the Philippines, and so a lot of Filipino have like Spanish last names.
Nice. And then you born and raised in the U.S.?
Yeah, in Arizona. Yep.
Born and raised. And then you moved to Austin pretty recently?
Like 2.5 weeks ago.
2.5 weeks ago. You just moved.
Yeah, I just got here. Yeah.
Nice, man. Welcome. So
Thanks.
what made you want to move to Austin? What like drew your like, what made you like, oh, I want to move to Austin?
I think there's a lot of different things, but in short, it really just comes down to me being at the age where I feel like I'm reaching a peak of a lot of different aspects of the things I do, whether it's lifting, jiu-jitsu, coaching, being an entrepreneur, all these different things. I don't have necessarily anything holding me back in Arizona besides like my friends and family. And as much as I appreciate them, I do believe that I, with the right people around, can make something happen for myself. So that's why like coming to a place like Austin, Texas and the surrounding areas, there's a lot of good opportunities for networking, for improving myself and the various skills that I aspire to be good at, all the different things really. So when it comes to pro wrestling, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, when it comes to lifting, when it comes to just growing my business, it's like a no-brainer. And then being blessed enough to have a girlfriend and best friend that's willing to kind of change the course of their life to come and move with me, that's a blessing within itself. So
nice, man.
Really for me, it was a career move, I guess you could say, but it was really just an opportunity for me to really seek what I believe to be my fullest potential in the different things that I do.
That's insane, man. You just said powerlifting, coaching, jiu-jitsu. You do all these things
as best as I can. Yeah.
That's insane, man. So what's your, it's not since day one you've been doing all these things. What'd you start with?
So I started with lifting back when I was 5. Basically,
at 5 you started lifting?
So I'm like 22 years deep. That's like been my thing for a long time.
That's when you got the name House, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't have a last name when I was born, so. But yeah, so my dad we had our garage set up. It was nothing crazy, but we had a good amount of weights, a good amount of barbells and dumbbells, and I would sit there as like a 2-3-year-old just kind of watching him lift weights, and he would go through various like weight transformations and whatnot. As soon as I got to like age 5 and I was old enough to kind of like talk, comprehend, and do basic motor patterns that are going to resemble that of like that lifting weights, I started asking like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And he started showing me. And then by the time I was 6, 7, we started doing weekend workouts. It would be like Saturday would be upper body, Sunday would be legs. And I just did that from like age 6 up until age 14. And then when I hit age 14, my dad stopped lifting, and then I took over my own training. And then from 15 on, I started training my best friends, and then that kind of grew into what I'm doing now, training myself for the various competitions I do, but also training now my group of clientele online and everything that's kind of supporting me while I'm here in Austin.
So your dad is what got you into lifting?
Yeah.
He was the source of
100%.
inspiration?
I would say so. Yeah. So my dad for sure. And then the only thing I've been doing longer than lifting, honestly, is watching pro wrestling. Specifically, my childhood hero was Bill Goldberg, and I'm lucky enough to call him a good friend of mine now. He lives in Texas. That's another reason why I moved.
No way.
Yeah. So if you're familiar with Bill Goldberg and his physique back in his prime, and the
bald guy,
yeah.
I mean, they're all
Stone Cold, but
Goldberg. No, I remember. Not the guy that drinking the beer and throwing it out.
Yeah, no, that's Stone Cold. Goldberg's the same thing, but probably a little more jacked, I guess you could say. Yeah. But
more bat to the bone.
Yeah, no doubt.
All-American.
Yes, exactly. He really is. If you see like his farm and everything that he lives on, he has a zebra. He has some kangaroos. It's nice. It's cool.
The bald eagle is within him.
Yes. When I used to watch him, I was like 3 years old, and I think at that age, kids are super impressionable about seeing something like pro wrestling and obviously taking it to be real, but then taking a step further and seeing people like this and like actually equating them to that of like Superman, Spider-Man, that like kids back in the 60s and 70s used to look up to. So Goldberg was mine. He was my childhood hero. And then you just see this physique and his traps are up to his ears and his delts and his pecs and everything else. And to me, just seeing that when I was a kid, I'm like, oh, so that's what male is supposed to look like. Like that's what I need to look like when I'm older, you know. And although I kind of stopped short on the height, I did try to chase the traps and everything.
you're pretty much my height though.
I'm about 5'9".
5'9".
Yeah. How tall are you?
5'11".
Okay.
On Tinder, 6'1".
There you go. Maybe I'm 5'11" too.
I'm just kidding. I deleted that app, guys. That's not true. I'm not on these things.
I also don't have Tinder.
Big waste of time. So it's not true when they say lifting early is going to stunt your growth?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to how you approach it, because in general, the thing would be, my short answer would be no, but I think it's important, that's why, to have like a mentor that knows how to obviously coach and teach the proper way to lift, because I'm not even necessarily sure if it's like a growth concern as much as it is a long-term damage concern. Between if you just take like a 5-year-old kid and told them to lift weights, how poorly would that go if they were doing it by themselves? But I do believe actually if you start a kid young enough that can actually benefit much later in life. For me, it was like turning into my entire career. But from even a strength or even growth standpoint, you know, there's a lot of studies out there that prove how much, you know, heavy deadlifting, heavy squatting with good form actually equates to an increase in natural growth hormone and stuff like that. So to me, the way I look at it is by lifting at a young age, myself or anybody, you kind of increase your set point per se. Like let's say your genetics put you to here. If you don't lift when you're younger, it stays about right here later on in life. But if you lift when you're younger, right before you hit puberty, you might be able to increase that a little bit because you've gone through the troubleshooting of learning technique, learning how to properly lift. Hopefully you learn how to program properly through that process, and you avoid a lot of the growing pains that I think a lot of people way back when, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, had to go through just because there wasn't a lot of information out. And so now that's why you see, I know you're not much in the powerlifting world, but that's why you see, like, for example, when I was 18 and I deadlifted 625 for the first time, that was like relatively unique. Like that was a national record in a lot of organizations and everything like that. And now you see like 16, 17-year-old kids deadlifting 600, 700 pounds. And like you could throw out the steroid thing, but to me it's like, what, these kids started steroids when they were 10, or is the information that's out now complementing the increasingly good potential of genetics that's now coming with each new generation? So yeah, I think as time goes on and we see more and more like teenagers in high school squatting 500, 600 pounds, benching 400 pounds, deadlifting like 600, 700 pounds, and it's becoming somewhat of a norm, to me, it's shows how much education has grown, but also how the ages of people that have lifted, because so many people are into lifting now, they pass that on to their kids. Now their kids have a higher set point, and then at that point it's like it just keeps going. So then it makes you wonder 10, 20 years from now, like what is the norm going to be then? You know, in the powerlifting world, we talk about like when I hit 700 pounds for the first time, like 4 or 5 years ago, is like, oh, that's pretty unique, and that's good, and for my body weight and everything else. Now it's like you got my friend that I just lifted with last week. He's 160 pounds, and he was deadlifting over 700 pounds, and it's like, dude, it's insane. And I could go on a tangent for days about this, but
Go.
When it comes to the progression of lifting, I think that coincides directly with people lifting at a much younger age and lifting at a much younger age with much better information that they have accessible.
That's a good point, man. And so, okay, so the answer would be learning the proper way earlier on.
Yeah, so that's a super, super long answer to your question. But yeah, learning the proper way when you're young so that you are working on the strength of the muscles, the strength of the tendons, strength of the joints and ligaments without necessarily having the diminishing returns of extra poundage on the joints and stuff like that, you know, because the argument is by lifting at a young age, you're shortening like the life expectancy of your growth plates, like the space in between. So you like shorten that because of the extra weight on the actual like growth plates. But then you can make the same argument with the kid that does a lot of like basketball on concrete or football, just doing a lot of pounding on their joints that way.
Yeah.
So to me, if you're training a kid in strength training, all that does is further prepare them for the athletics that they're doing, but also further prepares their body for whatever like pounding per se that comes from either the athletics or the lifting.
Nice.
Because I'm going to equate it to like the knee injury that I've rehabbed myself out of for the most part. You tear a ligament, multiple ligaments, and fracture a femur, and really movement is all healing. And with that said, building strength in the muscles surrounding any given joint is going to be one of your best equations to preventing injury, healing injury, mitigating the chance of serious injury.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you can actually now, it's come out that by lifting in a certain way, specifically through full range of motion, you can actually strengthen the joints and ligaments and tendons themselves through putting a certain amount of stress on them through a controlled environment. So again, a super deep rabbit hole. But when it comes to the argument of kids, you approach it the same way. And now when they get to my age, for example, outside of a freak injury with my knee, I rarely get injured. And I think a lot of it has to do with the durability that I built from age 5 up until now, age 27, of just lifting relatively in the right way. You know, I never think I've lifted in the right way until just now, just with the progress that I've gained, you know, learning.
You always learn.
But relatively safe, like lifting properly at least. And I think that has paved a road for me now being 22 years into lifting, several years into grappling, where I don't get injured very frequently. And I'm able to do lifting and grappling very hard and a very relatively high level, not on your level of grappling, and not on the necessarily highest level of powerlifting yet. But a lot of the competitions I do, you know, whether it be trials or whether it be in a pro event for powerlifting or the natural bodybuilding Olympia, like I'm like kind of knocking on the door humbly, right? But I'm saying this because I think it has to do with my time spent as a kid, like preparing my body for all these strenuous endeavors that I'm doing later on in life.
That's crazy. So what's the craziest injury you've had?
This knee injury.
Knee?
Yeah. So it was a full PCL tear, partial ACL tear, 3 separate MCL tears, like in the same like ligament.
Same ligament, 3 places.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then fractured my femur. So basically,
you were snowboarding or something?
No, it was Jiu Jitsu. Do you know who Austin Baker is?
Yeah.
He went against Dan and John Carlo recently.
Yeah.
So he's like one of my best friends, and we were like really good training partners back home. And it was right before Nogi Worlds, and it was like the week before, and it was just a freak accident where we're on the feet, and then he like honestly perfectly set up an outside trip, like pulled me, made me step. All my weight was on my right leg, and instead of coming into my ankle, he accidentally came into the side of my knee. And so I'll have to show you the video later. But he came to the side of my knee, and then that's where I believe I felt my PCL and ACL probably go, because I felt like and then both of us, and he's about Dan's size, a little bit shorter, both of us landed on my knee like at the same time, and that's where I believe the MCL had its 3 partial tears, and I think that's probably where I fractured the femur too. But anyways, that's like my most freakish injury, really. I'll have to show you the video. But yeah. I forgot what question even stemmed from that, but that was my most freakish injury. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's falling body weight. It's not like a submission getting ripped or something. It's falling body weight, wrestling.
Yeah, big boy, like insane. 265.
How long did that take you to like bounce back from?
I am in month 5, so that was 5 months ago. Yeah,
5 months ago, and you're already like, I can't even. You were training like last week.
Yeah, and that's why like I've been.
That's insane.
I've been dabbling like a few times a week, but I've been trying to like keep it somewhat part-time while I feel like it gets back to 100%.
Because I wanted to ask you, I'm like, I've seen you, but then I don't see you.
Yeah.
I've seen you in the room. Like you do a session here and there.
Yeah, I've been trying to go like 2 or 3 times a week if I can.
That's smart. That's smart.
But
that's smart.
It's like one of those things where it's disappointing because like I can feel my body tell me to do this, or like generally my style is like explosive wrestling, so I can tell my body wants me to shoot on this or whatever. Actually, the last time I rolled with Nicholas was the best I felt in a long time.
Last week,
yeah. At the very end, the knee kind of pulled a little bit, so I'm like, okay, let's take a few days off.
That's normal.
But yeah, other than that though, like it's feeling pretty good. Like I feel good enough to at least like push hard and get a good round in and stuff like that. I don't feel like I have to hold back as much as what I used to. Right. But again, I just started month 5, so and I didn't have surgery or anything. It's just been through my own rehab.
Wow, no surgery. That's insane, man.
Yeah. So the story with that, so it happened, and I'll show you the video. So basically, it's me like yelping like a little bitch. I'm like, oh God, fuck, oh fuck, why? Because like literally as it happened, like I could see like everything that I'm doing flash before my eyes. It was quite insane.
That's the first thing that happens usually. Yeah.
You know, it's not even like pain. It's more so just like fuck me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But with that said, though, like I thought for sure it was gonna be unrelated but related. A few years back, I actually accidentally tore my best friend's ACL in a takedown round. I shot a double leg. I went to cut him down. His foot got stuck in the mat as I pulled his knee, so he blew through his ACL and lateral meniscus, and that was like immediate surgery. He tried to stand up, he immediately collapsed. So I'm thinking to myself, like, I just had this 265-pound monster fling himself into my knee, and we both land. I'm like, dude, I don't even want to know what it's gonna be like when I stand. He picks me up, and I'm like, you know, putting weight on it and stuff like that. I'm like, why aren't I collapsing? Like it was good, right? Like it was decent. I walk over to the bench. I had a friend drive me home, and while the adrenaline was still kind of kicking and my knee was kind of warm, I was actually able to make it up the stairs by myself.
That's crazy.
And I'm not saying this because I'm some type of hero, but going back to our prior conversation, when it comes to preparing your body for and grappling the inevitable, all my years of strength training, more recently in the last 2 years, I've been super, super huge on mobility and knees over toes and building strength in like very weird vicarious positions. And dude, like that alone, I think is the only reason why I didn't have to go straight to surgery because of the strength that I built up in my knee prior. For example, like I think Nordic curls saved me like bar none from that specific injury. Like the Nordic curl specifically, the strength that it builds behind the knee for the hamstring is essential for protecting the ACL and the PCL that kind of line up right in the middle of the knee. And I had done those like 3 times a week for 2 months until like right before the injury happened. I had done my first 3 Nordic curls in a row, body weight. Now I was feeling really good on
straight.
Yeah, like I saw John Carlo do them the other day with GSP. Yeah, like body weight down and up. So I hit my first 3. I was feeling really good, and when that happened, I truly think that like is what helped keep things intact enough for me to be able to walk up the stairs like alone by myself. Now, granted, the next week or 2 were quite difficult between like swelling and muscles like having to compensate and stuff like that. But you know, I started my rehab, and this is like getting into a whole subject about how to rehab injuries. But I started my rehab literally like the next day, literally just doing this hundreds of times.
Yeah, I see what you're doing. Yeah.
With that said, that bled into backwards walking, bled into backwards sled, partial squats, anything that strengthens the muscles around the knee, just got straight into it. Because I got into a point where I progressed a lot of my movements to a relatively high level for somebody that's at least in a coaching position. But then I was immediately put in a position to where like I had less ability than a lot of my new clients that come in that have had knee problems their whole life. So basically, it was a really good opportunity for me to put my like product to the test because I had to regress everything. You know, I was doing super, super heavy sleds right before I had to regress to just backwards walking. Yeah. Eventually, I got from backwards walking to about 7 weeks later doing 1,000-pound sled pull backwards in that recovery process. And you can see like how all these movements accumulatively like add up to building the strength back. And I've been so adamant on the rehab for one, but also being able to do this on my own without surgery because knees over toes guy. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, 100%.
So he's a friend of mine, and I got to visit him a couple months ago when I went to Florida. And getting to hang out with him and his coaches and stuff like was a huge, I would say, inspiration in the recovery journey due to the fact that they preach self-rehabilitation, being able to rehab yourself without the need of surgery or painkillers and stuff like that. Yeah. And so, although I do believe certain injuries do require like immediate medical attention, based upon my ability to do certain things immediately after the injury, I just basically took it as I think I can do this by myself. Would somebody tell me that I need surgery? 100%. The doctor was telling me like he was like, yeah, we'll get you booked into surgery and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay. And I just never went back. And call it ignorant on my part, but I do think I'm doing a fairly good job of proving what the human body can do when you're diligent about progressing through an actual recovery process, I'm deadlifting very heavy again. I'm squatting relatively heavy. I do have a good amount of stability on that leg. And I do train Jiu Jitsu a few times a week, and hopefully that continues to progress. But yeah.
That's crazy. So, I mean, you said like certain things need surgery, but if your injury doesn't need surgery, what would need surgery?
I think that's a great question. And I don't know if anyone has the answer to it. But what I do think, though, is I think a lot of the general public and, the medical industry has led a lot of people to believe that you need injury well before you actually do. And I'm not a licensed professional to be able to tell you where that line is, but I do think I am an example of what you can do without it. And there's a lot of examples out there now too. And that's where somebody like Ben Patrick has been super helpful to the public because, you hear his story and his ability to bring himself to where his knee flexibility, his overall flexibility, and what he's able to do with his knees at a relatively older age is impressive, bar none. But, he did that with countless surgeries and history of painkillers and all these different things. And now he's kind of at where he's at, and he's taken his elderly mom and he's taken his wife, and they're able to do all these crazy things. I think it kind of makes people actually stop and think for themselves like, oh, maybe I can do this, because not you or us or I get in the mindset of, oh yeah, I have bad knees, I can't do anything. Clearly you're still competing at the highest level. You haven't used that as a mental limitation. No, but hundreds and thousands of people they like label themselves, almost like replace their first name. I'm just a bad knee guy, or I'm a bad back guy, a bad neck guy.
Excuse.
Right. And, if you were to talk to each of these individuals and just ask them like, well, what do you do to take care of it? What do you do to do this? They might give you a few things, but there's not a real regimented approach. And I think the more people actually show that there can be one, and it's just the hardest thing about it is literally like, say from my end, ego, going from deadlifting 700 plus pounds, squatting 600 plus pounds, and then telling me like, all right, you're going to have to walk backwards with a brace up and down this hill and just keep doing that. Like, It's like, damn, dude, like what an ego hit. Yeah. But then I think it was a huge growing lesson for me in particular, because, I went from being what I would consider my strongest and most athletic to a sliver of what I once was. And it's like, okay, at that point, do you either accept it for what it is, get surgery and deal with the implications that may or may not come from surgery after the fact, or do you take it under your own wing and just like see what you can do? And I think coming out of it, I've been able to help a lot of people, a lot of my clients that have dealt with knee injuries. I'm not a PT or a doctor, but I do have experience again with rehabbing. And so I think it's been beneficial for myself, my clients, and I guess anyone that's followed the knee stuff. Even Christos asked me about my knee when I came in, and I hope my knee journey thus far has been able to help a lot of people, and I've been told it has. So I'm glad I was able to take the opportunity to learn myself, but also like impact some other people and show what can be done.
Yeah, well, you're making me think, because I had an ACL tear as well, and then of course doctors and the medical system, it's a business at the end of the day. You need surgery, and I was like, yeah, I need surgery, and I think the old school mindset is, if you want to think long term, you need an ACL. You know what I mean? Because things will shift, and then down the line, screws will. The way the physio explained it to me is like, if you don't have your ACL, it's like, little screws are being like loosened up over time, this and that. But if you're diligent with your strength training, is that the case?
And that's the line that we're trying to figure out, right? And I like to think that it's quite possible to do quite a bit without it. Again, like most people don't understand. Like I think Ben Patrick's knees over toes guy, he's missing a handful of things in his knee and like has whatever reconstruction done, and the stuff that he does with his knee is better than most people can do without a knee injury.
Yeah.
So. And he's aging and getting better. So, and getting more athletic, mind you, as well. You know, so I look at people like him and I look at him and it's like outstanding individual, has done a lot for thousands of people. But when you look at Ben, it's not like you're looking at a freak of nature by any means. You just look at a guy that went against the status quo, educated himself and applied his own philosophies and made it work. And, there's things that he does that I don't do, but there's a lot of things that he does that has inspired me to kind of find my own taste with it. And for example, there's a lot of like Jiu Jitsu positions that I program for my clients that are similar to the stuff that he preaches, but more Jiu Jitsu related, whether it be like a weighted pigeon stretch, for example, that you can actually load and get good at when it comes to like playing guard and stuff like that. I'll have to show you.
You have to show me.
Yeah, dude. And when it comes to like helping with your knee, whatever I could help with, for sure. I'd love to.
I'm open-minded, man. Because same with me. Like I went through various, like I had a physio in Montreal. He did a great job, keeping me disciplined with the linear phase of because at first everything's linear, slow. Like you said, you start walking backwards and everything. And then you start to pivot, you start to hop, you do plyometrics and everything. But then I was like having a hard time walking even 2 years after. And then I met this guy called Guy Monarch in Detroit. He awesome. Told me, you got to work on mobility more. Like you got to loosen up your hips. You got to do some different things, not just strengthen. You mentioned mobility too. Then I ran into, then I found about knees over toes. Yeah, actually, I try to walk backwards like I look like a weirdo, man. People give me the weirdest looks.
That's smart, though.
When I'm walking backwards, people look at me. I feel like they reroute their walk. They're like, this weirdo's going to stab me or something. I'm like, no, man, I'm just trying to walk backwards. Is it okay to just walk backwards? No weight, nothing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great, depending upon where you're at. For example, fresh out of a knee injury, fresh out of an ACL tear, walking backwards can be as more than enough resistance. At a certain point, obviously, walking backwards is going to become easier, so it becomes more of a maintenance thing. That's when things like adding weight or resistance via sled, treadmill being turned off, like a cable machine. I have clients walk backwards with those if they don't have access to a sled. Anything to just put resistance on the VMO while the knee is traveling over the toe, the VMO being the vastus medialis of the quad, otherwise known as the teardrop. Yeah. That's going to be the muscle of the quad that's going to play the most role into protecting the knee as well as just general athleticism. So that's like super important when it comes to that. So like then at that point, like just, and that's why I go to Roca and it's amazing. So related, not related, I go to Roca and first of all, I've traveled around Austin a bit now. I've been to several gyms. Not a single one has a fucking Nordic curl machine or Nordic curl station. Pisses me off. I'm just like, dude, this is like the most like gold piece of equipment that you can have, and nobody has it except Roca. And I'm like, so why is it that the back of this eyewear shop, they have the most important piece of equipment for their employees, but like all the gyms around here, all the high level bodybuilding, powerlifting gyms, they don't have any. So I told myself, I was like, every single time I go to practice, whether it's leg day or not, I'm just going to do my Nordics on that one because it's helped a lot with my progression. Right now, my last bit of rehab that I have to deal with is like with the PCL tearing like right behind my knee. So that's like I can feel that tension when I'm doing Nordics. So progressing through those is a great way for me. But for you with the ACL, that's huge as well.
Fuck, man. I stopped doing them. I used to do a lot of them.
Really? I would 100%.
You know why I stopped? Because I was yanking a bit too much and it would pull on my knee. I was like, my ego, I was like, I want to do it. And I would like, pull.
So what I did for 2 months, because when I first started, bro, even before the knee injury, I could barely control myself down maybe 3 or 4 inches. So there's 3 ways that I progress it. The first way being regressing the range of motion. So basically you put a high box in front of you, control your body weight, and then stop at the box and come up. The second one being, which to me is the best way to do it because you're still working the full range of motion just with less body weight, is by hooking a band up underneath your armpits and putting it over your head. heavy band. That way you can go through the entire range of motion and get stronger through that with the band helping. So you're less likely to have to yank and like call on muscles like really quickly and risk injury that way.
Yeah.
And then the third way, I did it the least, but it is another way, is to only work the concentric. So for example, let's say you start at the bottom or you start on a box, like laying down on it, and then you just work the concentric aspect of it.
Not the eccentric.
Yeah. So those like and then the fourth way would be to only do the eccentric. I'm not a big fan of when people will do the eccentric and then push up with their hands.
That's what I used to do.
I think it's great because you'll still get stronger, but as far as tracking progression, I think there can be some issues because there's no way for you to physically check how hard you're pushing.
Yeah.
Like you can be like, oh, I barely push, or I pushed a little bit harder this time. But with a box, with a band, with it, all that, it's all quantifiable progression. I used a 24-inch box. Next week, I'm going to use a 20-inch box. I use a green heavy band. This week, I'm going to use a lighter purple band, like that type of stuff. So for me, it was much easier to be like, okay, I'm doing this amount of sets, this amount of reps, and I'm doing this modality in order to help me progress. So I just continue to decrease that. And that's what helped me the most. Because I find a lot of times people run into a dead end when it comes to the hand push.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling any progress.
And the reason being is because the hardest part of that curl is going to be at the very bottom with your leg fully extended, right? And when you continue to push yourself out of it, you're not training the muscles that are required in order to get yourself from flat back up to tall again.
Yeah.
So you miss out on essentially the most important part. So you either load it piece by piece by going lower on a box, or you train the full range of motion by letting a band do the majority of the work. But at least your muscles are still getting the stimulus.
That's insane. George, when he comes in, he does a lot of Nordics.
I think that's so awesome. Yeah, I saw that. That's so cool.
I need to start doing that stuff again. How many times a week would you recommend a jiu-jitsu athlete training twice a day from Monday to Friday? Do them. And you see how we train.
Yeah.
It's like that every session.
Right. Yeah. So the good news about Nordic curls, although they're very difficult, I don't find them to be overly taxing. So what I did when I was training, like, for example, I train once a day hard with Austin. He's super great training partner. So we go hard for about an hour.
Oh, wrestling?
With like Austin Baker, the guy, my friend who hurt my knee. Okay, we would train like an hour every single day.
I was thinking the beer guy with the wrestling.
Pro wrestler. Hopefully one day. But no, we would train like an hour every day, and I would do my lifting sessions with that too. And I did my Nordic curls 3 times a week, but I would keep the volume low. So with something like that, I say frequency can be pretty high, like the amount of times a week you're doing it, but the overall volume. So whether it's like 2 sets of 3, 2 sets of 5, or even 1 set of like 8 or something like that, people like undervalue how much that can actually do when you're a beginner at a movement. If I got to the point to where I could hold a 45-pound bar on my back and do Nordic curls like this, at a certain point I would have to increase my sets and reps. But coming out of a knee injury or somebody that never really does them, you could benefit a lot just by doing a set a day, a set every other day, 2 sets every other day.
And progressive work over time.
And it won't have any diminishing returns other than you seeing the benefit, So, and I did them the other day, like right before practice, and I know I did enough to get the stimulus to get stronger with my knee, but I didn't feel any type of backlash when I was rolling, and I did like 2 rounds with Marigali that day, and it was a hard practice for me. So but I didn't feel any backlash at all.
You prefer doing them before practice or after?
Probably before, to be honest, because specifically for me coming out of the knee injury, if something sketchy happened during practice that like pulled on the ligament a little bit awkwardly, I wouldn't want a raw ligament or whatever to like be put with a new stimulus of tension that it's not ready for. So I'd rather do it beforehand while it feels good and everything, and then just go into the practice.
That's crazy. It's there's I mean, I used to do them after. I used to do and I felt a little bit weaker. I felt like I could do a little bit less.
To me, it's better than not doing it.
Yeah.
My bad to interrupt, bro. But to me, it's better than not doing it. But if I had to pick, like, absolutely, I'd probably do it beforehand, honestly. Yeah.
Even now, like, because the classes, we never know when they start. Like, if I'm going to walk backwards, I'll turn the treadmill off. I'll do the walking backwards. I'll do the, like, toe races, like you flexing your foot.
If you want, I have a tib bar. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one of those. Have you tried one before?
No.
I'll bring it to practice. I think you'd like it.
Yeah.
It's basically the weighted variation of that.
anything that could help me also with, you know, like the pigeon stretch on one side is dead. Maybe
Really?
it's my groin. I'm not sure.
That was one of my favorite ones. I'd love to help.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
would
that'd be
love
great.
would love to check that out. So you mentioned your dad when you were 6 or 7 or 12,
Yeah, I started lifting when I was 5 with my dad. Yeah.
and then he stopped lifting weights.
Yeah, he stopped lifting when I was like 14. So we started going to a commercial gym nearby. It was called Bally's Total Fitness. It's not around anymore. But he and I lifted there from age 12 up until my freshman year of high school. And then after my freshman year of high school, then I just started lifting there on my own. And then I shortly after that switched over to Gold's, which became what's called EOS or EOS.
Oh yeah. They
Yeah.
have that in Vegas too.
Oh, really? Yeah, they do. And then after that, mostly now I prefer like not necessarily like small private gyms, but like more gyms that are geared towards like strength training or have a bigger variety of equipment,
Yeah.
you know, and stuff like that. So, you know, I've checked out On It here. Big Tex is one that's close by. And the one I went to yesterday is called Los Campeones. But they have a lot of really good equipment there.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Why did, if you don't mind me asking, why did your dad stop, or did he have to stop for any given reason?
No, I mean, to be honest, I think he just kind of lost motivation to lift at that age, and you know, for whatever reason, I do think it did have benefit for me because then it kind of forced me to go out on my own and start finding things for myself and start kind of implementing the lessons that he taught me as a kid, but then also start to gather information from other outside sources. And it's been great because a lot of my learning, although the foundation was built with my dad, a lot of the learning was occurring after the fact because, you know, you do what your dad taught you, and then it's like, okay, well, what else can I do, or what can I do better, or what form on this exercise, and you start learning different things. And to be honest, I had lifted from age 5 up until age 23 without a like coach per se, other than my dad. And then when I finally picked up my lifting coach when I was 23, I'd have to say my lifting progress and overall knowledge and understanding of form, application, programming, how to coach others has been better than ever due to the fact that I finally like opened up the doors to let somebody else actually take the reign of that. And then just like having the benefit of social media out there and seeing guys like Ben Patrick and you know, other guys out there that put out great content, and that's also been super helpful because, you know, I went to school for business and I graduated with a business degree. So like I'm not qualified to be a trainer, but you know, through the experiences of everything that I've done, you know, a fair amount of knowledge for sure.
Who's your trainer now?
His name's Dawson Wyndham. He's based out of North Carolina. Just a really well-known powerlifter and powerlifting coach. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think the kind of training you do can transfer to grappling?
So the short answer would be yes. I'd find a lot of styles of training, it would be hard for it to not have any carryover, right? So then it comes to the argument of which one is going to be the best carryover with the least diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And no, I don't think powerlifting is the best for sure. You know, for me, like powerlifting is something that I do competitively. I have my goals with that. I have a big competition coming up. So I have to train in respect to that. But like, let's say I was only a jiu-jitsu athlete, you know, there's elements of powerlifting that I would still definitely include, whether it be deadlifts or squatting or some form of heavy pressing. But there's a lot of other aspects that I have in my training as well, specifically in regards to either putting on more muscle mass, so more of a bodybuilding style, or just working on mobility, which is probably the best thing that you could do. So when it comes to styles of training for jiu-jitsu, I'm not even sure if it really has a name for it. It's more so just increasing your own mobility to the point to where in any given position you have a certain level of strength. For example, somebody in powerlifting or bodybuilding could come into a jiu-jitsu practice, and I've seen it 100 times over, and you know, they bench 500 pounds here to here and they squat 800 pounds here to here. But as soon as you get them out of that plane, then it's like they're weaker than the kid next to them, you know?
Weaker than Christos.
I think you're pretty strong, bro. But yeah, I for example, like be on top of like a big bench presser and they're like they're strong. And then maybe they gas out or whatever. And then their bench press here, and then you take them to here for either like an arm triangle Americana. Then it's just like, it's like a noodle. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so that's that's one of the things where, like, I think where you get into the discussion of a lot of people are into specific joint angle training. Like, a lot of people are like very heavy on 90-degree joint angle training and stuff like that because it's like the most optimal for like athletic performance. And although I don't disagree with that, with something like jiu-jitsu, outside of a handful of positions, when are you really in an optimal position for explosion or whatever the case may be? Like, maybe a takedown, maybe a few things, but other than that, you're getting crushed in guard, your knees to your face, like your shoulders up here, you're stacked on your head. Like, these are positions that you may not have to necessarily progress to a world-class level of strength, but you have to have some aspect of it in your training that respects, like, this is jiu-jitsu and I could end up in really any given position. You know, that's where I put a lot of emphasis on like shoulder mobility and hip mobility and like neck mobility and stuff like that, because those are the things, or even like spinal mobility, because those are the things that really, really matter. Those are the things that protect you. Sure, if you want high performance and you want to really build a lot of power from a 90-degree joint angle for like a double leg or a takedown, that's one thing. But if you don't have the back end work that keeps you protected when your spine's twisted and you're like this, or like your arms back here like this, it's like, to me, it's not worth as much as what people would think.
It's very similar to what my trainer said. He said, focus. If you're too tired to do lifting, stay mobile at least. Make sure you have good mobility. That's why these guys make fun of me with 15 bands and I wrap my leg up here.
I've been seeing what you do before practice is really smart. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they're like, yeah, you do it, but you're always warming up. I'm like, it's prevention. At least that's what I think it is.
Prevention, you know? and most people just, and I'm guilty of it too, where I look at the exercise, like let's say some of the stuff that you do before practice, and I look at it, I'm like, it's not heavy.
I don't feel like doing them.
Whatever. Yeah. No. But there's people, including myself, don't give enough credit to stuff like that, because just by doing it is so much better than just completely not, right? So to your coach's point, like if you can't lift or you're too tired to lift, by you just finding these different positions just to sit in or just use your body weight as resistance in, that does so much more in the long run than like just not doing absolutely anything, for sure.
Okay, good. Yeah. Good to know. Good to know. Good confirmation from different trainers.
I agree, man.
So you would consider yourself a personal trainer, a power lifter? What's the... Because, like, right now you say you have a powerlifting. You have a powerlifting competition coming up. When is it?
It's in October, Virginia. It's called American Pro.
Damn. Okay, so you have you do a camp of that many months, huh?
It'll be quite interesting because trials is like 2 weeks before, then the American Pro, and then the Natural Olympia is like 3 weeks after that.
Olympia?
Yeah, for the natural bodybuilding. Yeah.
So do you practicing for both at the same time?
Yeah, and it's not something I haven't done before. I just haven't done it with two very, very high-stake competitions. So it'll be interesting. But I kind of find some enjoyment pushing myself to see how well I can do in both.
Respect,
for sure.
Man. Yeah, and then how do you fit grappling in there? Like, if you do jiu-jitsu, how does that not take away some of that strength?
So, yes, to a certain degree. The way that I've planned it out for myself, as soon as this is like 100%, I'll do my powerlifting training in the morning, and then I'll hit the afternoon practice at 2. The reason why I would put it in that respect is because I'd rather be forced to use better technique or be exposed for what I'm like when I'm not 100% in jiu-jitsu and benefit from that, rather than doing jiu-jitsu first and then going into powerlifting and then being guaranteed to perform worse due to the fact that my energy has been sat from the hard jiu-jitsu training. And again, like you said, you guys don't train light at all. It's hard, intense practices. You guys train safe, but you don't train light. It's you guys are the best team in the world. So I'm like, okay, so I'm better off doing my powerlifting training in the morning and then using that as a warm-up, per se, going into jiu-jitsu. That way, my powerlifting training, I have more control of my variables. Yeah, because let's say it's a heavy deadlift that I have to go for on a given day. Then if I did jiu-jitsu that day, maybe I luck out and I get like a bunch of easy rounds. I mean, in Arizona, maybe. At New Wave, probably not.
Especially at Roca, man.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Everybody's getting beat up.
Yeah,
so the best guys.
At that point, I'm nearly guaranteed to be at a way less energy level than I would be otherwise. So I'd rather have control of the energy variable and lift prior to the training, because I know, like, sure, energy definitely matters in jiu-jitsu, but me being where I'm at, so much under everybody else there, it's like I was gonna lose regardless. So I'd rather like learn from what technical errors that I'm making, be it because I'm tired or be it because I'm just not that good yet, and just benefit as much as I can on both ends, you know? So that's the way I see it.
That's crazy. I'm impressed, first of all, that you're doing this 5 months after the injury you explained to us.
Thanks, man.
That's crazy, man. And like there's a fracture in there too.
I don't know if it's still there. I don't feel like it is, or maybe it is. I don't know, but I don't know. I haven't gotten an MRI since. So
you got an MRI just when it happened?
Just when it happened, a few weeks afterwards. Yeah. So
a few weeks after?
Yeah, and then we moved.
Not right away. Not like the next day. Well, I need to know.
That was because people kept fucking with me. They kept scheduling me and then unscheduling me, and then my insurance and like a bunch of different things. We finally got in like 2.5 weeks later, thankfully.
Okay, that's still not bad. 2 weeks is good. Yeah. Still good. But, for an athlete is good. It's not bad. That's insane, man. But it took even longer to get the results back. It was like four weeks later. 4 weeks to get the results.
Yeah. So the whole time I was like, well, I don't plan to get surgery anyways. I'm just going to keep rehabbing myself. And then I got the results back. I'm like, oh, that's worse than I thought, you know?
Wow.
But yeah.
But the fracture probably healed by now, no?
I'd probably say it's pretty close. You know, if the PCL fully tore through, that may not necessarily heal. But the research that I did was if the PCL fully tears through, you don't always need surgery. It's kind of dependent upon the stability of the knee after the fact. So, for example, like immediately afterwards, my stability on it was very good. And then now being able to do the things that I'm doing with like heavy weights or hard jiu-jitsu training, it's holding steady fine without any like warning signs. So the only reason I would need surgery based upon the research I did is if like I could feel like immediate instability and I couldn't do anything off of it. That would be like a sign that like it would need surgery. So, you know, again, I'm kind of a walking experiment as is, in my opinion. So like it will only be until I can say, yeah, I feel 100%. Can I really talk about like everything I did to get up to this point? But so far, I put myself at about like maybe 90 to 95% on a given day. And that's like my take so far.
What does your coach, so you said Mr. Wyndham? He's like, do you consider him like your mentor now? Like your coach?
In a lot of ways, yeah. He's the reason why I even started my online coaching business. Absolutely.
So you have okay, so that's good. I mean, I'm not saying it's your fallback plan because you seem like you have good chances of winning the powerlifting and the Olympia. But that's good. You have online coaching too, no?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's been really good because I had a good client base back home in Arizona, but, you know, I can't train in Arizona anymore. So I just basically started promoting my online coaching and stuff like that, and it's going like really, really well. I'm almost hitting the goals that I had set for like 6 months down the road. So it's good all around. I can't complain. I'm thankful that I have a lot of like support of people that want to like learn from me, but also support me while I'm out here chasing my dreams.
Nice, man. We'll plug that in for sure. The program.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Where can people find it?
JimmyHouse.com, or you can go on my Instagram and contact
Jimmy
me.
House is easy to remember. JimmyHouse.com, man. Just that.
Sir.
So your coach, Mr. Wyndham, when you started working with him, did he bring any new like details or something new that you didn't know, like basic fundamentals, like how to perform a deadlift, how to squat, are those techniques similar to like a butterfly sweep in jiu-jitsu where there's always new ways to do it better?
Yes. So let me kind of paint it like this. You could go to like such and such school in the middle of nowhere, and that guy who bought a black belt on the internet could probably show an armbar, and we'd all agree that an armbar is meant to break the elbow.
HenryGracie.com.
But from that school over to you guys, this guy might do the armbar a little bit differently, and some might say less efficiently than, say, what you guys do. So when it comes to powerlifting, it's like I had a good idea on how to do a deadlift, a squat, and I coached many, many people through it at that point. But again, there's always going to be somebody better. There's always going to be somebody that can kind of watch what you're doing and call you out on certain things. I find a lot of powerlifting, most everybody knows how to do it properly, but myself included, there's things that the ego will cause you to do that will cause form to break down. For example, with deadlifts, I'm a very explosive lifter, so I would rely on an explosion much more than positioning for the longest time. And when I started working with my coach Dawson, he was very adamant from the get-go about like actually putting more emphasis on the positioning of the movement, how to actually leverage the weight up versus just like exploding through the weight, stuff like that. He also opened my mind up to proper programming, like actually how to like take an athlete and start from week 1 and progress them through several weeks of progression, either into a meet or just into their goals further. And then the last thing would be, he was the one that actually introduced me to Ben Patrick for knees over toes, and that was beneficial for many reasons, obviously, like we talked about. So yeah, in a lot of ways, he just opened my mind to wanting to be better, because I think when I started working with him, I started to realize like how much I didn't know, and I took it as a little bit of a failure on my end, because he's younger than me. And I remember at one point in time, back when we were teenagers, he had like commented on my Instagram asking me for advice on squats. And then, you know, I followed him for several years after that, and he just, you know, exploded from a competitive standpoint, but also a coaching standpoint. So I was like, how did I really let this person pass me up? And respectfully, I love him, but respectfully, like, it made me want to be better. So seeing everything that he did for himself in a shorter time frame, I was like, okay, I need to be better. I need to push myself to learn and apply and do all these different things. So all around, it was a really good growth process. And that's why, like, now, especially being in Austin, I try to look for opportunities on a daily to get my ass kicked. That's one thing that I always try to preach to people, is that, like, if you aren't trying to get your ass kicked in one way, shape, or form every single day, then you're hiding from progress. And lifting, like down in Houston, the best powerlifter in the world are down there. So being able to lift and train with them is something that is super special, because again, like 160-pound kids that are younger than me are making me feel weak. And I go to New Wave, and, you know, sure, biggest, strongest guy there, but by no means the best jiu-jitsu guy at all. And I'm just kind of getting humbled on a daily basis. And it's amazing, really, at the end of the day. And that's my biggest lesson, really, to anybody. And I think that's one of my maybe biggest strengths, is that I think where the ego tells me to not do something or to run away from something like that, I just force myself to do it until I just get better because of it. That's why, you know, quick takeaway here, but just super thankful for, like, your team specifically for allowing me to come in as, like, a newbie from Arizona, because, you know, it's for one, an honor and a privilege to be part of, like, your team in any capacity, but to be around you guys, and, like, and also I just want to, like, I want to say on record, I feel like most people in the social media realm, especially, like, people back home in Arizona that don't know, I think they look at New Wave as, like, the bad guys or whatever. Yeah. It's quite the opposite. Right. And from my experience, even when I came to Austin a few months back for the first time to visit, I don't know if you were there or not, but regardless, like, everyone there was, like, extremely welcoming to me. And a lot of times I judge people based upon how they treat me when they don't know who I am, versus, like, some of the other gyms that I ventured out to weren't nearly as welcoming. And if it was welcoming, it was because, like, they knew me, who I was prior. Versus, like, when I came into you guys, you know, Mike Rakshan had kind of set it up, and then I reached out to Gordon for a private, and he's like, I'm not doing privates right now because ADCC, but if you want to come train, I was like, okay, cool. So we're waiting outside, and then I remember Jay coming up, Luis, Davis, Juan, had no idea who I was, but, like, super welcoming, super nice. And, like, after the fact, we kept up on Instagram, and just, it was a really, like, healthy experience. And then when I went back home, I was like, dude, whatever I have to do to be a part of this in any capacity, I have to do it, because not only is the best team in the world, like, statistically, like, it's not arguable. Yeah. It's, like, the atmosphere that you guys create is great. Like, super, super serious, but you guys can all tell that you're very close with one another. And then on top of that too, just very, very welcoming and humble to, like, even people coming in. It's awesome.
There's a part where it has to be serious, man. Everything you do, whatever you do, there's a part where it's serious work. You have to put in a certain amount of time where it's serious work. You can't joke around and play around and fool around the whole time. You know what I mean? I mean, you got to focus. There's a certain part of training where drilling, you got to give it everything, and you got to focus. And then, of course, before training, we're fucking around. After training, we're fucking around. Right. It's normal. You know what I mean? You want to have that. I enjoy that. But I feel like, yeah, you need to have a bit of serious. You gotta have a good time and be welcoming. Because if you don't enjoy your day to day in training, you're not gonna last. You know what I mean? You're doing things for the wrong reasons. You know, at least for me, like the why keeps changing. Right. You know what I mean? It always keeps changing. At first, it was like, I won't be able to make a living. Okay, now I'm able to make a living, make money. Okay, now I have some money, and it keeps changing. I want to make it to that comp. Then you want to win that comp. Now, when you win that comp, you keep changing it, you know, for something that keeps pushing you. And then I just, it teaches me how to learn to enjoy the day-to-day there, you know what I mean, and enjoy the serious vibe for a couple of minutes.
That's really cool.
Whatever, and then you keep training.
That's awesome.
So how when did you get into grappling?
6 years ago. A little over 6 years ago, yeah. Well, I wrestled all throughout high school, and then after high school, I got into powerlifting, and I went from I wrestled 195 in high school, so I went from about 200 to 270 in like 2.5 years, like fat, like very fat.
You were fat before?
Like chubby, yeah.
Oh
I mean, like, sure, I could lift weight, but I was chubby for sure. So I got up to 270, and I just remember like looking at myself, and I thought to myself, like, wow, like I used to I do pride myself in being very athletic, versatile, and the different things I can do with my body. And then I got up to 270 just from not doing wrestling anymore, eating like shit daily. Like I had a relationship at the time. We just eat out all the time. And just thinking in my head that the heavier that I got, the more weight I could lift. But it's funny because now being between 200 and 215, I can lift substantially more than I did ever at 270. So that's a myth. I'll put that out there.
So it's not true. The heavier you are, the more you can lift is not true.
Yeah, to a certain degree. And I think that carries the most over for bench. If I were to rank them as far as like gaining weight goes, gaining weight will make you better at bench most likely, then probably squat, and then deadlift last. Damn. Deadlift more so because it's super dependent on your body's leverages. And like basically your job is to not get in your own way. And so when you're really, really big, especially like at my frame being like 5'9", you know, when I get big and like my lats get out to here, or my gut gets out, like I'm like in my own way, versus like when I'm slimmer and my arms reach down to my knees, like I can get in a way better position for deadlift and lift much more. Maybe not even because I'm stronger, but just because my technique's better. For a squat, like I find to a certain degree, like for example, my best squat at 235 was 715, and then at like 200 is about like it's in the low 600s. So to a certain degree, but I always argue with people that pound for pound, I'm much stronger than what I was when I was heavier. So yeah, and to me, like being able to squat 600 instead of 700, but still being able to do jiu-jitsu at a good level is much more worth it than just being able to squat heavy. So yeah.
Jimmy, humble guy, man. You're talking about not being able to see your lats. We can see them through the jacket and the traps, man. Yeah, big. So, okay, let's say there's a jiu-jitsu guy listening to this right now. He's never lifted any weights, which is very common in jiu-jitsu, man. A lot of people in jiu-jitsu don't lift weights, don't do anything, don't do mobility.
Yeah.
They're just sitting, you know, perched on their spine with their neck down, bad posture. Where do they start? Where does a jiu-jitsu guy that has done nothing, zero, start?
I think a lot of people will most likely reach out to somebody in a coaching position, and whether that's myself or 100 different people I could recommend.
Okay.
That's usually what most people do. For example, I think Gordon is a huge reason for this, because he goes up the best of all time, and he looks like he should be competing in like classic or men's physique, you know?
Yeah.
And so people are like, oh, so he lifts weights and he documents it. So I thought lifting weight was bad. I got to start lifting weight. So that's where people like me benefit. So I have to say thank you to people like Gordon, because, you know, I agree with you. A lot of people don't lift, but it's slowly increasing the amount of people that are either lifting or are curious about lifting.
No, that's true. That's true.
And I think it's becoming more apparent now that in order to prevent or heal injuries, like, yes, you have to like lift or 100%. You have to train, you know.
100%.
Before it's like, oh, just rest or ice or elevate. And it's like, yes, but you have to actually train and get it better. So to answer your question, I think the smartest thing, if the finances were good, is to invest into somebody that can actually lead you through that process, whether it's in person or online. Person, if I had to pick, probably in person would be the best if you had access to it. Very, very least, do your due diligence and spend a fair amount of time online looking at all the different types of content that are out there, so you can kind of develop something for yourself. But I do think that it would just be most beneficial to actually like be led by somebody through the process of how to lift properly and everything. I
always feel like having a coach is super important.
Yeah, man.
Someone that knows more than you, man. They have an outside perspective, something that can, you know, help you, you know, like see the mistakes and then correct you.
Yeah, right. It's like, you can learn a lot like on Instagram or YouTube, but imagine like if you were doing jiu-jitsu and like your coach was like Instagram videos or something like that.
There's a lot of that, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. But imagine like where you or whoever else would be if you weren't actually training under a coach. But in the lifting world or in the fitness world, like people do that all the time. They just walk in the gym and, oh, I saw so-and-so's workout, I'm going to do that. And, you know, hopefully it was a good workout. But still, you can't benefit as much as you could if you were actually learning underneath somebody.
The other thing for me, too, is not just lifting, okay, I did it for a couple of days or I did it for a week and then I stopped, is I want, like continuity. Mm-hmm. Something over time that I can build and I can see and I can like improve over time. Mm-hmm. That's something that I'm missing, you know. Like this is something I'd like to have, you know, be able to get in, have a starting point. Okay, where do I start? Okay, good form maybe. And then how can I mix it up? So I know there are like not phases, I don't know how to say it, but like types of training. You know, so correct me if I'm wrong, there's like building mass, building strength, building power. Mm-hmm. Like, is there any other thing? Like, how would you structure these? Let's say I have a competition. Okay, I want to get ready for trials mid-September and I want to start now. Would I start with heavy weights? Would I start with low weights? Would I do like explosive things? Like how do I fit these in together?
Yeah, so I think it's dependent upon, let's say, I assume you probably cut down to a weight.
Yeah, and I have to cut too.
So that's where, for somebody, like for some people, I could be like, well, let's spend X amount of time in kind of a building phase where we're conditioning our body for heavier lifts to come, but we're working on putting on some muscle mass. Okay. You, on the other hand, not necessarily trying to put on a whole lot of weight or muscle mass, but we're more so focused on getting stronger. So you still kind of approach it the same way, but at the beginning, the volume is more respective on building strength over time as opposed to directly building muscle right away. So they're similar. It just kind of comes down to, again, like the total amount of volume.
Okay.
And then to our other point, to some degree, in any program, in my opinion, there should always be some type of corrective exercises or mobility exercises that are just going to have more immediate benefit to your performance as is. For example, you know, I think a lot of things are subjective, like how much does a deadlift help you in jiu-jitsu? Well, if somebody's max deadlift is 50 pounds and then they work to bring it up to 315, you probably see a fair amount of improvement in their game.
Really?
Like if they could only like literally speaking, if they could only deadlift 50 pounds, I would assume they would feel pretty weak on the mat, right?
Yeah.
And they brought it up to like 315. Like, okay, you've added a fair amount of strength. I'd expect some carryover. Mm-hmm. But let's say somebody that deadlifts 500 pounds compared to somebody like myself that's like in the 700s, just getting closer to 800. It's like in certain positions, you might be like, oh, Jimmy feels really strong here. Mm-hmm. But like so much so to where the guy that deadlifts 500 pounds like feels that much different? Probably not, especially if the guy that deadlifts 500 is better at jiu-jitsu than me. You know, so then it comes to the point of like, okay, if so-and-so's deadlift is adequate, what are they weak at? So like, for me, like my hips were one of my weakest points for the longest time. My groin, my shoulders were really bad at one point. So having exercises in there to actually target weak points as opposed to just continually strengthening what's already strong is important, and that comes down to the individual. Mm-hmm. So again, it really like person to person to person. But for you, I would probably spend the first part of the training phase leading into something several months down the road, perfecting form, conditioning the body to the lifts that I feel that will have the most benefits later on. Okay. And then picking certain positions that you feel or that I can see are imbalances or lacking areas when it comes to your mobility, because strength is relative, but strength is, in my opinion, is going to be the most viable when it's able to be expressed in any given position. Meaning, again, going back to that powerlifter example, powerlifter can express strength from here to here, but in jiu-jitsu, if you put them here, then it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Versus like if you can be strong here to here, but you can also express that strength here, then we're making some breakthroughs with strength. And so whether that's here or like being able to do the splits and maintain load there, or or being able to put your knee up to your face and be comfortable in that position, being able to like be from like a super crunch position and guard and then wrestle up out of nowhere, like having like strength that's expressible through those positions is what I would try to like target. And that's why it's so subjective to the individual, because like you could give a cookie cutter program and achieve cookie cutter results, but I could also be like, oh, you tell me that you have trouble with the pigeon stretch and with your left side or whatever. Okay, so we need to target external rotation of the hip and start building strength there, so that over time, and maybe even immediately, you'll see like some benefit in your actual rolling, because that's what jiu-jitsu is. It's technique, but it's being able to express strength in the most random positions. For example, one of the silliest yet viable things that I do, I call it an ATG preacher curl, which is essentially a full range of motion preacher curl with the arm fully extended out here. Okay. And to most people, that's dangerous. You're going to tear a bicep. But over time, if you go from like 5 pounds to 10 pounds, this actually becomes something that's actually very, very strong. And then your chances of, one, fighting out of an arm bar, not getting injured from an arm bar, etc., increases. So like things like that.
It's like the Nordic curl.
Yeah, the Nordic curl.
Progress into things. So how do you pinpoint, is there, okay, obviously you talk to the client, you talk to the person, but like the pinpoint weaknesses. So like me, I'm pretty aware of where I'm weak in the body. Like when I do bench, my shoulder sometimes goes a little bit forward. That hurts. Certain things hurt with my hip. I'm like, you know, pretty aware of my body. But someone who doesn't have any much awareness, is there some like protocol you follow to pinpoint weaknesses?
Depending upon if it's in person or online. If it's in person, I can probably do it like right then and there. Like, hey, sit in a body weight squat, ass to grass for me. I can't. Oh, okay. Well, that shows us some.
You see, maybe if he's tilted in one way or another,
or if like he's like really far back on his heels. Oh, we need to work on his ankle mobility, or like his lower back's rounding at the very bottom, so he probably has tight hamstrings or poor hip mobility, like stuff like that. If it's an online client, then a lot of times what I'll ask them to do, well, first I'll just ask them, like, do you have any like pain areas or issues that I should be aware of? X, Y, and Z. Yes or no. The other thing that I'll ask though is, you know, send me whatever videos that you have of yourself lifting, squat, deadlift, bench, like anything really, because like it's important to know where the strength level's at. But to your point, oh, when they squat, they shift, or oh, you see how their toes like shifting out when they're getting towards the bottom, or look how their butt's tucking underneath, like things like that maybe the person couldn't be able to target themselves.
Can't see it.
Correct.
You can't feel it either.
But then from a coaching perspective, be like, okay, yeah, so we're gonna work on that. A lot of people jump into barbell squats way too soon, anyways.
Okay.
But yeah, with that said, like there's a lot of stuff that I'll look at as a coach that lets me know, is this person ready to jump on the barbell right away, or do we need to start with something more so like a goblet squat, or something that's a squat variation that's going to help them practice the movement pattern, but not necessarily force them in a position they're not ready for.
Yeah. What about, oh, so goblet squat? So you like training with kettlebells as well?
Or dumbbell. I usually just have them, whatever it is, just hold it here.
Dumbbell.
Yeah.
What about, so okay, that's the bit early stages. You're pinpointing weaknesses. You're working that through mobility exercises. You're getting the basic, getting the basic lifts with good form. For me, obviously, I wouldn't want to put too much weight, so it'd be not too much weight but good form. Now I'm getting closer. Am I gonna start changing the workout to things with more explosivity? Things like different, like kettlebell swings, snatches, things like that. Would you start implementing things like that afterwards?
I do a few kettlebell stuff. The reason why I don't do a lot more is simply just because I don't have a lot of experience. A lot of the mentors I work with, like Phil DeRue, and there's one of my friends on it. His name's Eric Lehigh, Primal Soldier is his name. He's like big into kettlebells.
I think I know who he is.
Yeah.
Jacked.
Yeah.
Very jacked.
I would say jack guy. Yeah, about
veiny.
Yeah, veiny guy.
Tall?
Taller than me. He's just
doesn't matter.
I know, right?
No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I have some kettlebell stuff in there for sure. Nothing crazy. What I would do specifically or what I do for people coming out of tournaments, it would be the movements stay the same, but the last 3 to 4 weeks, it's going to be like a variation that's going to allow the CNS to recover, but still allow you to get better at the movement and maybe even a little bit stronger once you come out of that competition. So what does that mean? That could be like tempo stuff. So if somebody like 2 or 3 months out was like peaking on their squats, and they're starting to do like heavy sets of 5, heavy sets of 3. Now all of a sudden they're like 6 weeks to a month out. I might take those squats they were doing and start changing them to lighter load, but long pauses, long tempos. For example, like in this knee recovery, I've done a lot of like 10-second eccentric squats, stuff like that, to where there's no possible way that you're not benefiting from it, but your CNS, because the load is lighter, is allowed to recover, which is going to have much more benefit for you directly leading into the competition, as far as like how you're neurologically able to respond to certain things. With that said, certain aspects of athleticism and whatnot, whether that's jumping, sprinting, sled work, I carry that as a consistent for the most part. Depending upon the individual, I may take the frequency of their lifts down. If your average person in jiu-jitsu lifts 3 to 4 times a week, I might take somebody down to 2 or 3, and the week of competition, maybe 1 or 2, but with about like 3 to 4 days to rest prior to the comp.
And then when you say SNC, do you mean strength and conditioning?
CNS.
CNS.
Central nervous system, yeah.
Central nervous system. Yeah. Okay, so that needs the rest.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of similar. Like in powerlifting, you have deload weeks included that basically allow your muscles, but more importantly, your CNS to recover. And the CNS for your average person could be anywhere from like 14 to 21 days to actually have like a full recovery. Let's say you just maxed out on deadlift or something like that. You're just like that's going to take your muscles maybe a week to recover, but the CNS, like everything down the middle, like leading up into your brain, like the taxation of that takes a while. So you go through a phase of conditioning and building some muscle, and then you go through a phase of peaking strength. That phase of peaking strength, although you're getting stronger, you're also taxing your CNS, central nervous system. So leading into the comp, the thing would be allow your CNS to recover, while if you prioritize those movements, find a variation of those movements that handles less load but still pushes you like in a different way.
So when we're training jiu-jitsu, we're probably taxing our CNS as well?
Definitely, for sure, especially with how hard you guys train and how often. But I would say it in a different fashion. It's like, I think CNS fatigue, if I were to describe it, it's kind of like that. I would say it's like that kind of that foggy feeling that you might feel like either during, before, or after a practice, to where like you should be there, but like you don't really want to, but you're just kind of forcing yourself anyways. Versus the times where you're going and you're alert and you're thinking and you're kind of firing. A lot of that can be due to like CNS fatigue and whatnot.
That's why you take a day off every now and then.
I would say so. Yeah, I find that to be important.
It's like yesterday we were talking in the group of guys, and they're like, I hate the fact that it's part of like the culture, man. When I feel like I'm starting to have fever, or when I'm like, that's when I take a day off. I'm like, this is too late.
Right? Yeah, it's too late.
If you're starting to have fever, probably too late. You should have taken a day off already before. Are you like, do you recommend the day off a week every 10 days? What's your take on that?
I think when you're very, very experienced, then you can be more specific. Every 10 days, every 20 days.
20 days.
It depends. I think it depends on the person's work capacity and what they build up to. For myself, if I'm like going all in, what I found is anywhere from 14 to 20 days, I need to fit like a rest day in there.
One
for
day
sure.
Only.
Wow, yeah,
that's crazy.
But I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and my body's been accustomed to it and everything else. For like your average person that doesn't have that amount of experience, having a rest day or two every week would be beneficial, because like you may not need that rest day, but it will add up to when you actually do need it, however many weeks down the road. From a programming perspective, most people that are good at programming will implement like a deload week every 4th week, just so that the person, when they're training, they can expect that time to recover on that 4th week. Whether their body needs it or not, their body is allowed to kind of like recharge a little bit. So there's so many variables in jiu-jitsu. Like some practices are going to be harder than others, and you're just going to feel better on certain days. But if you have your planned days of rest or your planned weeks of like taking off your training, then like you can kind of see like you're more likely to be able to be firing on this given week or whatever else, because you like plan these things in advance.
I don't plan this. So like a deload week. Let's say I'm competing this weekend. I'm competing on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
This should be a deload week.
I would probably put it as a deload. Yeah.
Okay, I did 2 sessions. One of them was very hard in the afternoon. Today I did a session. It was pretty hard in the morning, so probably light in the afternoon. Is it too late for me to start the deload week, or am I still like within the amount of days that is good for me to deload?
Are we talking about lifting or jiu-jitsu or
Jiu-jitsu,
both?
jiu-jitsu.
Well, I guess that's dependent upon what qualifications you guys need to meet on the team to compete, because that's obviously of high priority.
Yeah.
But like if you had free will of your training, yeah, if you're used to training twice a day, I'd probably say like the last like 4 days or so, like break it down to like one session.
One session lighter.
Lighter, and in a perfect world, maybe the afternoon so you can get more sleep.
Take a nap before training.
Yeah, something like that. And then the
the
last day or two, then maybe completely off, and then you feel good. Like I probably have the last day, or if you did something light the last day. But I think that also is important to take into account, like what do you feel best doing? Like if you have your routine, and you sell it on BJJ Fanatics, your routine pre-match, then you should probably follow with that, because that's what you also feel good doing.
Yeah, I remember George telling me, if it feels right for you, do it. You know what I mean? And that kind of, that stuck with me. But at the same time, I'm sure there's always room, like if you don't have a coach, you kind of think it's better, but you don't know until a coach comes in and tells you. So, that's why I'm like, for you guys, when you guys do powerlifting competition, your deload week, you do it the week of.
Yeah, deload week, if it's a 12 to 16 week prep, every 4th week will probably be a deload, and the week leading into it is, for me, like one of my clients is about to do a powerlifting meet. He was training 5 days a week. This last month I broke him down to 3, but the 3 days are still like relatively heavy lifting, but now he has an actual 4 days to recover leading into the meet, and then the last week itself will be basically just rest for the most part. Yeah.
Nice.
But that's really dependent, but I think powerlifting, jiu-jitsu is similar. It's just lifting and powerlifting, that's like what you're doing for the competition. Lifting and jiu-jitsu is purely supplementation. So with that said too, like it's totally okay to like cut your lifting 5 to 7 days beforehand, because at that point you're definitely not getting any stronger. If you want to do some stuff like mobility, just keep your body moving and keep it from getting stiff. I think that's super viable.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're going to be building any more muscle, getting any stronger within the last week of training. So a lot of times I'll just tell the person, all right, we're going to do our last 2 lifting days, and then here's a couple cardio sessions that you can do, and then that's it.
Cardio, that's something I was literally about to ask you about. Where do you fit things like assault bike, ropes, cardio kind of workouts?
If the person wants it and I find it to be beneficial what they're doing, like a jiu-jitsu athlete, then I'll probably have some aspect of it in the training in every single session, whether that's before the lifting or after. If it's leading into the competition, then I'll probably just have like one decently hard like 20-minute circuit or so for them to just bust through and get home, so that they can kind of like get their lungs blown out, add a little bit of cardio, burn some calories, maybe if they have to make weight, break a sweat, and then focus on just resting. Yeah.
So the last week you said? Or?
Yeah. Usually the last week I'll just have them do like a few different circuits and everything.
That's exactly what my trainer said as well.
Smart.
Because there's a lot of risk for you training hard the week of doing jiu-jitsu. Is a lot of risk of you rolling hard, wrestling, doing scramble, especially you're tired, you're stressed. So if you bring the intensity down, but you do like a little bit of a cardio circuit just to blow out your lungs, like you said, and then just keep your joints safe and add some mobility. That's smart, man. That's smart. Yeah, man. It's nice to hear the same thing from different sources, because this world, like the fitness world, is so much
polluted.
Yeah, it's so much controversy, man.
It really is.
But do you see it getting better, or like is it like, I don't know?
I think it's definitely better than what it was, because information is so easily accessible, and everybody has like a how to like do a lat pull down video out now. So like even the people that are brand new can learn something.
Even me soon. I'm gonna put a lat blow out my shoulder. Never mind.
But then you have your niches within fitness that I think doesn't allow for as much progress as what could. For example, like you have a powerlifting niche and a bodybuilding niche and a mobility niche and stuff like that. And I think each one kind of has like its benefits that everybody can learn from, but then each one also has like its downfall. And the problem is too many people are gung-ho on one versus the other. And that's why, I guess, just like my endeavors between pro wrestling and jiu-jitsu and bodybuilding and powerlifting, I try to dabble in everything, because like I realize that full powerlifting training has as many cons as it does pros when you break it down. Bodybuilding the same way, mobility training the same way. Like, very good to be mobile, but at the same time, if you're trying to be an elite athlete that's explosive and strong, you got to have some elements of either powerlifting or explosive type movements in there, you know, weightlifting. Bodybuilding, like you want to add muscle, but then you don't want to be immobile, but these guys don't work on the mobility. So that's why, like, I think I've developed my own niche in a lot of ways, and that's why I get a lot of my clients, is because a lot of people come to me, they want to look good, they want to be strong, but they also don't want to hurt. And that's like, I think one of the best kinds of feedbacks that I get from my clients is the combination of, I feel stronger than ever and I feel pain-free, because then that's how I know I've done my job as my own individual coach. Because there's tons of powerlifting coaches out there, there's a ton of bodybuilding, tons of jiu-jitsu coaches, but you know, with my body of work, I've got to where I'm at an elite level of strength, at a decently elite level of jiu-jitsu, with very, very minimal injuries and wear and tear. And that's where a lot of people kind of like come to me, because I dabble in a lot of different things.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, you're doing so much. You're doing grappling, pro wrestling, powerlifting, and then what's the other one?
Like bodybuilding and stuff.
Bodybuilding. Yeah. So you have you have experience in all these things, which is good, man.
Thank you.
That's crazy, though, because your client's like, okay, I mean, this guy's trying everything. You're being your own experiment with the injury, with that extremely crazy catastrophic injury that like people would have nightmares just thinking about. Right. So it definitely helps you out. So you are a coach. Obviously, when you're a coach, your goal is to help others, you know, but like for your personal goals, like with everything you're doing, what is probably the top priority for you?
So that's hard to answer, but I would say the top goal would be getting into pro wrestling, like the WWE more specifically.
You have your first fan right here, Christos.
We already talked about wrestling. We're gonna go to the AEW event. Yeah.
I used to love the pro wrestling, but my dad always told me it's fake. I thought it was real.
Oh, dude, you should come. They come into Austin in May, right? Yeah. If you want to come, I can.
When?
May. What is it? 17th. Yeah.
Oh, that's after
I can get us all
Denver
tickets.
Open. No
one
way.
One of my online clients is on AEW. So.
AEW. What is that?
AEW is like.
Because it used to be SmackDown, and it used to be.
Yeah, it's still SmackDown and Raw, but AEW is a separate company that's on the come up as of recently. So a lot of people.
Bellator.
Yeah, basically, yeah. A lot of people like it just because it's like a different taste of wrestling, you know, than WWE.
The same?
At the end of the day, I guess you could call it the same, but a lot of people like AEW because there's more like wrestling in it versus like WWE is very much promo heavy, which from the perspective of like the mainstream audience is good because people like to watch soap operas.
People flying from cages and landing on tables, and
so AEW brought a little bit more of that stuff back, which like the old school wrestling fan, I don't really have a preference, but the old school wrestling fan, a lot of them really like the AEW stuff over that because, for example, my online client, I showed him the spot the other day, but basically like they had a ladder on top of a table and he was going against somebody, and then the guy had him in like a powerbomb position. And so the guy flips over him, and he flips, and this is like from like way the fuck up here. And then they land all the way down, miss the table, and my client lands like on his ankle essentially, and his foot was like turned the other way. So yeah, he's taking a quick break from the online training.
Quick break, guys. Quick 2 years.
Yeah, right.
That's it. I'll be right back once my foot is back where it should be.
It's insane. Some of
the rate of injury with pro wrestling, though, man, is pretty high. You're not worried about that?
Yes, it's quite high. From the training that I done back home with my coach Don Vitale, you learn that it really comes down to like your style. And a lot of times when it comes to pro wrestling, you have like the high flyers and stuff that kind of wow the audience with what they're able to do with like the various moves that they do. But then you have somebody like John Cena, Roman Reigns, Hulk Hogan, even that
Triple H,
Triple H,
I used
even
to love that guy.
That don't do a lot of the fancy moves, but they're able to connect with the audience through the persona through the different things they say during the promo, like just who they are as a character. And that in itself makes up for a lot of like the high flying stuff, which the way my coach describes me is like, all that stuff is really cool to watch in person. But a lot of times guys like that, they kind of, they get lost in the mix because there's like so many of them. Versus like, you know, your John Cena's and your Triple H's and your Goldbergs even that do like the same 3 to 5 moves or whatever. Those are the guys that have the biggest fan base because they just found a way to connect with the audience. So the injury rate is high, and a lot of times it's inevitable because mistakes can always happen. But, you know, you have your superstars like John Cena that have been successful for decades and have been at the top of the company for a long time simply because he's very, very good at not doing anything really, really risky, you know?
That's smart.
Yeah.
That's smart, though.
And if you look at him now, like you see videos of him still like power cleaning a bunch and squatting like 500 pounds and stuff. He's like still well put together. So,
but you know what? In grappling, you see like guys, it's pretty similar. Guys that connect with the crowd. Like if you look at Gordon, for example, Mergali's getting better at it now. It's just being open, being honest. I don't know. Like at least in grappling, but in wrestling, what are they doing differently? Are they just like catching like cans of beer? I don't know. I haven't watched wrestling in a long time. But what?
I don't know if they're even necessarily doing it differently. They've just been doing it longer on a bigger platform. So you see like UFC following WWE's footstep, and for that reason, it's at where it's at. I've seen several interviews where Dana White talks about like the stuff that he's learned from Vince McMahon and their marketing strategies. And I think now that Jiu Jitsu is like in the following in the footsteps of something like UFC, then you got characters like Gordon Ryan and who else is a character that comes to mind?
Craig.
Yeah, Craig
Jones.
To where like, yeah, you develop a following because it in the viewer's head it becomes like the same thing as watching WWE. It's like almost like this soap opera thing. And although your guys' split was very, very real, like, dude, that generated so much like good stuff for the jiu-jitsu community because it became like this like relative thing.
It's real
for
though.
everybody.
That's what's crazy about it.
And it's real.
And it's just so real.
And it's real. Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, to the viewer's head though, now it's like, oh, I can go on Instagram and follow up with my favorite jiu-jitsu show or whatever else. But, you know, and real or not, it is real. But regardless if it wasn't, it's like I think it does a lot for the sport because you see something like WWE where it's choreographed. Obviously, most people know that. But they have a certain way to market things. And you could take somebody like Stone Cold or John Cena, and even somebody that doesn't watch wrestling is going to be able to, like, know who that is. Yeah. That comes from, to me, like the power that the WWE has to utilize their platform to create these personas for their superstars.
So there's a lot of marketing involved too.
Yeah,
like,
that's why, you know, obviously, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but Gordon's like super nice, you know?
He's the quietest guy in the room.
Yeah,
the quietest guy. You won't even notice him.
Exactly. And so, you know, with that said, like, goes to show, like, wow, he's like doing a lot for himself, obviously, but doing a lot for the sport because even in the lifting world now, I talked to several of my friends that are very successful, and everybody knows who Gordon is, and they'll ask me about Gordon and stuff like that. So he's starting to, or he has been that character now where, like, even if you don't watch jiu-jitsu, you kind of know who that is, which is great for people in your position and my position to then benefit from, like, his success and everything else. So, yeah, man, it's a great question. It's cool to ponder, but I do think the WWE strategy of marketing and creating good and bad guys is like really the recipe. And whether or not, like, you're actually a bad guy in real life or not, like, you know, that people want to watch it. So,
yeah, I think in his book he probably explains how you can build your brand like that. But I think it comes down to being authentic, like who you really are, you know, being open to like what you really think.
Right.
You know what I mean? I really think that's the recipe.
Would you say, because this is my perspective from the outside, I don't think that he's not being himself. I just think he's being vocal with certain things. You know, it's not like he's like being fake by any means, but he's just being vocal because it's very good marketing for himself and everything else. Yeah.
Certain topics that, you know, get under people's skin. He says the things that are true, but he adds a bit of seasoning to it.
Yeah,
he adds that adobo, you know, that bit of sazon, you know, the sazon of going for a way for it to sting and then to get under people's skin. You know what I mean? He's direct. There's no like curve or like pass to the opponent he's shooting straight. And then I think that gets under people's skin sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
And you got to be able to, like, even me, like, I've been on the receiving end of some things. Like when I lose, when I do bad. Or,
Really?
Yeah, it's good. I don't mind it, you know? Like, I like it. You know what I mean? It's like taking a cold ice shower. It, like, it wakes you up, you know? It's like, okay, shit, he's right. I got to do this. I got to do that. But it's good, man. I mean, I think it helps everybody. It helps us with the sport. I think we should, like, learn and maybe try to do a bit more of it, you know? Be more authentic, be more ourselves.
Yeah, I've had so many people kind of like express their opinions about it. It's like, oh, I just wish you would be like more humble about it and stuff like that. And it's like, you know, I see the argument, but like in a perfect world, what if he was, and then where would jiu-jitsu be if he wasn't? And like, it's kind of hard to deny where jiu-jitsu has always been jiu-jitsu, but it is where it is now for a certain reason. And like, you need somebody to kind of feel that.
Yeah.
And by him filling that space, like, has done so much for every single jiu-jitsu school owner there is. Like, so many people, back when I was teaching all the classes at my prior school back home, TNT, MMA, you know, people come in all the time. Oh, how'd you hear about us? Or why are you here? Joe Rogan or Gordon Ryan or UFC. Like, it'd be like those three, you know?
Gordon Ryan.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Like, oh, yeah, I heard about that Gordon Ryan guy on Joe Rogan and blah, blah, blah. You know, it'd be like some combination of those three.
Amazing.
I just don't think a lot of people realize, unless you've been in like a teaching role or a coaching role, like how much it actually has an effect. So
like McGregor too.
Obviously McGregor. So McGregor, yeah, you got guys like McGregor that like kind of pique people's interest, and then it just kind of goes down the rabbit hole, and then eventually they end up at their local jiu-jitsu gym, you know. But yeah, Conor McGregor did a great job of that too. I'd probably go out on a limb to say that Gordon is probably slightly better of a person than Conor, maybe. You know, it seems that way. I don't know, based upon like.
I don't know Conor too well.
I don't know Conor too well either. I'm just going off of like the attack on the bus.
Yeah, we're gonna do something like that.
Yeah,
Gordon's a super nice guy, man.
Yeah, he's super nice. He's always been super nice to me. Yeah, I always tell people this. The story of how I met Gordon for the first time was at ADCC trials, West Coast in 2019, and you know he's like big in lift. It was the trials that Nicky Rod won for the first time.
Oh, Nicky Rod won, yeah. Oh, isn't that Muscle Farm?
Yeah, in Burbank, California.
Yeah.
And Gordon is a CT fan, CT Fletcher. Are you familiar?
CT Fletcher. Yeah.
Yeah, so CT is a good friend of mine, and he came to watch me compete that day. And Gordon was there. He was watching his brother. And then, like, Gordon came over to, like, introduce himself. And I was like, CT, this is, like, the best grappler in the world. And then they became friends or whatever. So I take credit that I introduced them together, because then they had CT on a Flow Grappling podcast like a couple months later or whatever with him and Gordon and whoever was running it. It was cool. But yeah, that's how I first met Gordon. And ever since then, he's always been super nice to me. And when he first invited me to Roca, he came up and said what's up, and then he introduced himself to my girlfriend. You know, very polite. And I've heard a bunch of stories from like Juan and Dan and stuff about like things he's done to take care of people and everything like that. So it's super commendable.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Gordon, man.
That's awesome.
He brought me from Montreal.
Really?
We drove in his Jeep at the time, filled with rubber ducks.
Really?
I had a couple of near heart attacks because he drives like crazy maniac. It says you can drive Montreal to New York in 6 hours. Not with Gordon.
No.
Gordon is just like you're taking a flight, but on the ground.
Much?
He shaved off at least an hour.
Jesus, wow.
Man, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, he drives very good.
That's gnarly. So you would travel to Henzo's from Montreal?
Yeah, the first couple of times, Gordon would come to help some. Tom Breeze was the first guy he helped. He pro MMA fighter. And then after, I'd start taking the bus, and then I started flying, and then I started staying like longer periods of time in New York, New Jersey. He let me stay at his house.
Damn. What year was that when you first started with him?
2016, I want to say.
Okay.
2016?
Damn,
yeah, 2016. The year before the 2016? Yeah. That's when I did East Coast trials. Okay. Back when it was still in that gymnasium.
Right.
In New Jersey.
Yeah, I remember seeing those videos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When he got in like a little altercation with Dylan.
Oh, he did in that?
Because my first trials I made it to the finals against Manchagera. I'm not sure what he's up to now. But I lost, and then I think they didn't want to shake Gordon's hand or something. And it went viral.
Oh, damn.
I
barely remember this now. Wow.
Yeah, it was cool, man. You did trials too, no?
Yeah, I done the West Coast and East Coast both one time.
That's crazy. So you have also aspirations for actual grappling.
Yeah. You know, I think that as a part-time-ish grappler, you know, you can only accomplish so much, but like I do want to see through my full potential with my schedule and everything, you know, just
with your crazy schedule, man. That's
thanks,
insane.
bro. I appreciate it.
So, but okay, so pro wrestling is the priority though.
Yeah, because so, you know, we just met, but like in short, my biggest goal really is to obtain a level of success that allows myself to then create careers for the best friends that work underneath me. Nice. And take care of my parents back home. For example, so my How Strong brand is my business, How Strong. And my 3 best friends all co-own that with me. Nice, and man. Yeah, and so I do my best to help them monetize that as much as they can right now. Like, for example, they take all the shirt sales and stuff like that for themselves versus,
fair play,
you know,
man. Fair play. I'll get me a t-shirt.
I appreciate it.
Make sure you guys support, get a t-shirt, man.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
But with that said, though, a lot of my growth in the last year or two has also had a lot of benefit towards them and being able to now use the business to create like careers for themselves. For example, my best friend that moved out here with me, he's actually working underneath me as like my assistant or manager, whatever you want to call it, and starting to make money from that. So slowly but surely through the growth of myself is paving way back into the business. And so with that said, my friends, you know, sob story, been there for me since I was 5, like about as long as I've started lifting. And we've just had this solid friendship for so long. We've all lived in the same neighborhood, and I just think it'd be the coolest thing ever for them to basically like be able to take care of themselves and their families through essentially my success. And so with that said, you know, the little things I do in powerlifting and jiu-jitsu and bodybuilding and all that all accumulate. But I do think putting myself on a platform as big as WWE with the different talents that I do have would help expedite that process. That's a huge like goal or huge reason really that I'm out here, you know, being around Goldberg. He's a huge mentor of mine. Seeing the stuff that he's done, like I look at Goldberg, I'm really like symbolic or metaphorical or spiritual in the way that I look at my life and I look at different things that have happened. I'm like, why did Goldberg impact me when I was 3 years old? Why is that? Why is that a thing? Do I just look at it as coincidence, or do I think about it as a sign? You know, being able to get to the point to where like several years down the road, I actually meet my childhood hero, can actually call him a friend, and he has me over at his house for dinner and stuff. And like, that's all but coincidence to me. So I see all these different things as signs, and whether that's ignorant or not, I use it as motivation to continue striving for more. And I see the impact that he had on me as a kid. And that's like, besides taking care of my friends, my other huge goal in life is just to continue impacting kids, like being able to have the kids program back home. That changed my life for the better.
Nice.
And being on a platform like WWE, that would essentially be like one of the first steps into making that happen for myself and everybody else. So, you know, moving out here was the goal, to put myself around the right people, put myself around people that would make me better, but also like force myself to grow and learn so that I can make something like that happen for myself.
That's amazing. That's amazing, man. Of course.
Thank you,
bro. Making the goal bigger than yourself, I feel like it's gonna be huge, man.
Thanks, bro.
So what's like a pro wrestling practice like?
So I would still consider myself a beginner in a lot of ways. I'm pretty decent on the fundamentals, but basically like what I would do, shortly after I got my black belt last year, I started training, and basically like I had put my resume in for WWE, and it was so crazy. Like, I haven't told many people this, but I guess enough time has passed, so it doesn't matter. But like a week or two after I got my black belt, I got a call from WWE headquarters, and it showed up like Connecticut, you know, where they're located, and it was one of their head talent scouts, I guess, or head of talent.
Wow.
And he asked, because I had a couple of people refer me to him, and he had called me asking if I put in my resume for the tryout and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. So I put in my resume again, and then in all honesty, I haven't heard from him back. I've talked to a few people within the company, but it kind of hit a dead end when like all the scandal stuff kind of happened.
Scandal?
There was like some like, you know what I'm talking about. There was like a scandal that happened, like where Vince McMahon was doing X, Y, and Z, and I don't even know what I'm allowed to talk about. But
what do you mean? What do you mean?
Anyways, a lot of people.
If he knows about it, it's probably like public.
It is public.
He's biting his nails, getting nervous now. He's like, "Fuck, man, we should probably not talk about it."
Oh shit! It was just like some legal stuff with like some stuff with like women
Vince
and
McMahon?
stuff like but anyways, during that process, a lot of people that I was talking to, I don't think ended up continuing with the company. So I kind of hit a dead end there. So like Goldberg's been a big mentor throughout the whole process. So as I've been preparing back home, to answer your question, a lot of what we covered is just like the basics between how to break fall, how to roll, basic spots, the basic structure of a match. You know, like there's a lot of similarities carrying over from jiu-jitsu to wrestling. For example, like, you know, like if you remember to when you're a white belt and you're like learning how to break fall, and then like you get like to week 2 and then you stop caring about it. Well, the break falling and stuff was never more relative until I started doing the pro wrestling. Like I would always skip the warm-ups, the break falls and everything like that. I'm like, nah, I'm good. But then like all of a sudden, like the break falls and stuff like that become very, very like, you know, relative in the ring. And some of them, like, you have to kind of be kind of aware, because it's not just you breaking your fall, but it's breaking your fall in such a way that portrays whatever story that you're telling to the audience. So that's like the tricky part. And some of the other things that I've had issues with is, one, I wrestle right leg lead, but in traditional American pro wrestling, they go left leg lead. Why? So, because of how the match kind of feeds. So like, let's say I throw you against the ropes and you come back at me, you're feeding to the side that I'm going to like clothesline you with or shoulder tackle you with. That's going to allow us to kind of keep feeding moves to each other. So that's why they lead with the left.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So with that said, that, and then keeping your head up is another huge thing that like was a struggle point with me at the beginning. Cause like in grappling, like your head down and you're like doing this, you're not necessarily concerned about your facial expression. Everything is pro wrestling is like up, you know, if you get hit in the back, it's like this, or like if, you know, if you grab in a headlock, it's up and you're showing emotion, versus like I would have a tendency at the beginning to just be like down and stuff like that.
They don't like that.
Yeah, they want, you know, again, it's painting a story. Dramatic. So yeah, you have to like be big and like show face and all these different things. Yeah, so they're just things that you don't think about in jiu-jitsu, but it's vastly important in wrestling.
So how often are you practicing that now?
I haven't practiced since I left Arizona, because I got to find a new school that I want to go to out here.
Goldberg school, man. Have Goldberg start his school.
I know, he should. He should,
man.
Yeah.
I know Goldberg, and I barely follow. Like,
I know, right? Booker, do you know Booker T?
Booker T.
He has one in Houston. So I'd love to go there, just obviously far, but I do go down there to train with my powerlifting friends.
For sure, man.
So
it's like 2 hours from here, no?
Yeah, I got to figure out their schedule. So I'm interested in that one. I also, like, again, when I feel like 100% with the knee, because a lot of the pro wrestling stuff, or at least the way I do it, is not super acrobatic, but it's like decently acrobatic. Like I do high jumps and stuff like that.
Dude, they're doing the most acrobatic shit in pro wrestling.
So I just want to make sure that this is like super steady, but yeah, I'll have to find a school. But back home, I was training 2 to 3 times a week. I would do privates with the coach that owns the school. It's called Train in AZ. Don Vitale is the owner.
What's Goldberg up to now?
He isn't wrestling anymore.
He's retired?
Yes and no. Like, he's not under contract with the WWE, but from what I'm seeing, he's looking for like a retirement match or like retirement stretch, like one last one. So whether that's with WWE or another promotion, that's what I've seen. I haven't talked to him about it personally. But
AEW, no.
AEW.
It's AEW.
Like, there's rumors about it. I can't confirm either which way, but yeah. But those are the 2 main promotions, you know.
So Raw and SmackDown are the same thing.
Yeah, they're both under WWE, and then they have their developmental show, which is called NXT.
NXT,
where they have like their new guys come up and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
You think it'll become like MMA? Like they have MMA. There's so many organizations now. There's in Europe. There's here. There's PFL. There's Bellator. There's UFC. There's obviously. Do you see wrestling growing to the point where it's like a lot of bigger organization all over the world, or is it going to be like mostly in the US? I don't know.
Yeah, you know, depending upon who you talk to, I would say it already has. Like, I'm sure you kind of know, like, Satoshi told me he went to some events, but like New Japan is huge over in Japan.
Oh,
and
there's
you got,
pro wrestling in Japan?
Yeah, it's like really, really popular.
We need to get Satoshi in there, man.
I know. Yeah, you should do it after he does. He retires from MMA.
Me versus Satoshi. Would love him.
I know. That'd be so cool. Then you got the lucha scene, and then you got Ring of Honor. There's a couple other ones that aren't like super big, but are well known if you follow wrestling. So like, there's like a bunch around, man. It's called the independent scene, where essentially like you're not necessarily married to one organization over the other. You can kind of like freelance. WWE isn't like that, but a lot of the other ones, like for example, one of my friends, he's on AEW, but he also will do like independent shows like in Arizona or California, wherever else. So it's like really big, but you wouldn't know that unless you're like deep into becoming a wrestling fan.
So have you done any like pro wrestling shows? Have you ever done it? Like
Not yet. No.
Not yet.
Yeah, actually, right before I hurt my knee, I was about to talk to my coach about like possibly doing one before I moved. But it just didn't happen. So.
Yeah, but those guys that do pro wrestling, they do it and they get like not old, but they can do it like pretty later on in their like it's not like a soccer player that like primes and like end of 20s. It's like you can do it a little bit longer. No,
you definitely can, because once you get to an age to where, well, first of all, if you're like able to be in something like WWE and you're at an older age, it's probably because you established yourself when you're younger and you're able to do more. Because then at that point, once you're older, people already kind of like want to watch you because of your persona and what you've done. You know, like Ric Flair or like Hulk Hogan when he was older, even Goldberg to some degree now. Like when people know who you are, what you've done, they kind of like match what you did in the past to there, and they kind of like tune in regardless of what you're doing. Versus like if you just took some random like 55-year-old dude that's in shape but hasn't done wrestling, that probably wouldn't go over super well, you know.
So what would be your way of getting like the crowd and the fans, like the masses behind you? Would you put like one of those Mexican lucha libre masks on your face?
Not unless I was required. But for me, I think when under the spotlight, I'm decently good at letting my charisma come out, you know. And then on top of that, with the physique that I build, I have like one particular pose that I really like to strike. So I thought of different ways where I hit X move and I just go to the crowd and like make it my signature and just like tie in like my intensity and whatnot with my physique and my explosive type of style. I also think that the combination of my prior wrestling and jiu-jitsu would also look pretty cool in a WWE ring, especially now since MMA is growing. WWE is doing a lot more of those type of moves to make it more relatable to the fans. Like I remember WrestleMania a couple years ago, it was Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. And basically, like, Roman Reigns running for a spear, and he's like this. And then, like, Brock Lesnar caught a Kimura like this. Everyone was, like, losing their minds, like, oh. It was pretty wild.
Well, that's nice, man. Yeah, they're all coming together.
Yeah, yeah. And then you had, like, Undertaker throwing on triangles and stuff. I think he did.
Undertaker?
Yeah, did
triangle?
I could have sworn he was, like, going for, like, a heel hook or something in a match. Or somebody was.
Omoplata?
It's a go-go plata. He calls it the Hell's Gate.
Oh, yeah.
It's nice to see how these things are like helping each other now. It's really nice. I'm sure it'll pay off, man, all the things you're doing.
Thanks, man.
So now like now you're 5 months post injury. In October will be 10 months.
I injured myself December 2nd, so yeah, I'll probably be like 9 or 10 months, right?
9-10 months. So you'll be good to do the powerlifting competition.
Powerlifting will be good
because it's linear. You feel
yeah,
like
it's all
safer,
linear. I feel good.
Less impact of body weight and all that stuff.
The jiu-jitsu is the only one now where like certain like cuts or, for example, when I was rolling with Nicholas, he like went for arm bar and he kind of fell off a little bit, and my ankle was this way, and he started putting pressure on the inside of my knee. So like just it's like those funky positions that you can't really like prepare for. Those are the ones.
Here's the thing. I remember from my experience with the ACL, it was the same thing. Like some positions were with pull, but I feel like if you do it the way you're doing it, where it's every now and then you train and then you're doing your mobility and everything, your body will get used to these things again. Because at first I'd have a lot of scares too. Don't forget your body's like kind of being protective. So I'm not saying you're being like your body's stiffening up, but it's just getting used to doing it again. So the way you're doing it every now and then is very smart.
Okay, cool. I appreciate that.
No, because when I got back, I was doing when I got back, I started training back in Montreal, and I was doing a couple of sessions, and there are things where I would gauge how my knee's doing, like going down the stairs, walking around, I feel getting tight. I'm like, okay, I pushed a little bit too much, back up, do a couple of days of rehab, go in the water, do a bit of linear stuff, and then come back later, and then next day it'd be good. Then when I got back to New York, I started doing like more intense training, because I came back right into like ADCC camp. ADCC camp was on, and then I had like a couple of months to get back doing leg lock rounds. I'd have so many like scares.
Really?
So many scares, like things would pinch, with this, with that, but your body gets used to it, you know. But if I have to give one advice, it's patience.
Okay.
especially
That's
with
awesome.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah. But that's good because I mean, so you have the powerlifting and then you said you have bodybuilding after?
Yeah, and it's kind of, I luck out there because they all kind of go hand to hand, at least weight class wise. Because I compete at 198 for powerlifting, I would be doing 88 for trials, and
88,
then and then my bodybuilding weight on stage, I would assume would be anywhere from like 190 to 193.
Oh, they have weight classes for that too?
Not for the natural bodybuilding, but like as far as where I would be like stage ready, like really really shredded, it would be like 190, 193.
Man, bodybuilding, I don't know much about bodybuilding, but I always look at it as like, is it true you guys have to dehydrate and not drink for days?
So a lot of the pros like IFBB, they do that. As a natural though, I do find that to be kind of counterproductive because a lot of the size that you portray on stage, like without the enhancement of drugs, comes from like your muscle belly holding water, right? So it's more so than like dehydrating. It's about like eating the foods that you know that won't cause an inflammatory response, that will hold excess water underneath the skin, but still keep the muscle itself full of water. So for example, the last show I did when I got my Pro Guard, my coach like had me drinking all week long. And the day of, I didn't drink a lot, but I drank like a couple bottles of water. But like most people would be like skin dry, no water, like a couple days out, or like sips, and then the day of like nothing.
They pass out. I've seen
pass out, cramp, even worse sometimes, you know what I mean? So, but like with the stuff that comes with the sport of like enhanced bodybuilding, like some of the stuff they take, and to be honest, I couldn't even tell you what it is, but it kind of allows them to keep that fullness even though they're dehydrating. So basically your muscles get really, really full, but as they're dehydrating, the skin just becomes like paper thin and just looks sick, or in a good way, but like crazy.
There's a science behind that too. It's crazy getting into pro wrestling. Dude, I'm fucking impressed,
man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
There's a lot of shit going on. So, okay, that's shortly after.
Yeah, so the trials is first, and then the powerlifting meet is second, and then the bodybuilding shows last. The only dilemma in my head is if I should do the trials or not, considering that there's another one, just because with this powerlifting meet in particular, it's like a really big one, and it's one that could probably do a lot for my career. And then the deadlift number I'm shooting for would put me second all time for my weight class.
Okay.
The record all time at 198 is 826, and then I'll be shooting for about 804. That would put me second. So if I can get like a high ranking from doing this powerlifting meet after not competing in a while, I think that'd be beneficial to me. But I'm just going to kind of play it by ear and see where we're at, really. I'd love to do all three. If it's going to completely hinder my performance in the one that I want to do good at, then I might adjust, but we'll see. So,
because I think... Sorry.
No, you're good. I was going to say, Dan was telling me, because my mom's from the Philippines, doing like the Asian trials was something I was thinking about. Maybe I can ask you about that later on.
100%.
But
you should,
yeah, because
definitely.
I'm not from, but my mom's from there, so like doing like a dual citizenship thing and then trying.
Well, if you want to do trials, definitely do it. I mean, I grew up in the Middle East. I grew up in Lebanon. I was born there. I have my Lebanese passport.
Okay.
But if you have your mom, she has a birth certificate from there, whatnot, I think it should be easy. And then if you go to Houston's a big city. They have the like Lebanese consulate, Japanese consulate. They probably have a Filipino consulate too. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
To get your passport and everything. I'm just guessing because Houston's like one of the biggest cities in the U.S., if not the biggest. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, maybe New York or like somewhere like L.A. or something.
That's interesting.
But I would think it'd be like a big city if you want to do it. Yeah, Asian trials. Listen, man. Nowadays, it's like they're all gonna be tough.
Yeah,
they're gonna have tough guys, but you said you weigh around 200, you do 88.
I would do 88, yeah.
Nice. Something interesting you mentioned, you said, so bodybuilding at the highest level, they're on like performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah, I think there's a couple outliers in like the women's categories and maybe like the men's physique category.
What do you mean outliers?
Like ones that don't take drugs. As far as like what I know, I don't really like being the guy to accuse because I get a lot of accusations. So I don't really like even being in that mix. But I do think that there are a couple people that don't, or at least say they don't. So, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally speaking, at the highest level, like it's pretty well known. Like you're taking a bunch of stuff to, put the best physique out there.
In Jiu Jitsu too, And you know what? Some people accuse me of juicing. And
Really?
At first, it bothered me. Because I'm like, oh, no, I'm not juicing. What people would think. But then I'm like, again, like adjusting the why. Like, why am I not juicing? Is it so people... Because now some people are going to think I'm juicing. But then the reason I do it, then I'll change this. Like, okay, it's for me. It's for my own health. It's for my longevity. It's maybe waiting. Maybe it's like a little extra challenge. Will I never do it? Man, who knows? You don't know what's going to happen. When I was 19, I never thought I'd be doing jiu-jitsu for a living. So you never know what's going to happen in your life. Right now, I'm going to keep doing the blood works. I'm going to keep doing everything I can to be healthy. You know what I mean? I see where my levels are. Right now, I don't touch anything. You know, I try to keep learning. I try to keep improving my jiu-jitsu, my technique. Because at the end of the day, John says that's what wins you masters. It's your jiu-jitsu, how good you are. But then who knows? Because in jiu-jitsu too, man, it's like Mr. Olympia. You know, if you look at ADCC, those guys second match start taking their rash guards off with the lighting now, production with Mo, with the lighting Mo's putting, man, these guys look like they could do Mr. Olympia and do pretty good at Mr. Olympia themselves.
Actually, I have a question to bounce off of you then that might benefit the viewers, which is with you being at the high level that you are, being top 16 in your weight class in the entire world, by not taking it, could you honestly say that you feel like you're missing out or not by not doing so? Or what's your take on that?
So here's the thing. Like, I study the matches against those juiced guys that I go up against. Okay, so let's say ADCC 20. The last one is 2022. Okay, I went up against Mika Galvao. And
oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah. And then, I mean, he got popped too for steroids.
That's
and all
wild
that.
to me. I did not expect that. That's crazy.
Mika?
Yeah.
He's been on it since he was very young.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and like when I fist bumped with him, like when we started the match, I was like, holy shit, this guy. Because I faced him twice. The first time I was 185, so I was a little bit stronger, a little bit. But when I cut down to 170, I was like a little bit weaker. You know what I mean? It shouldn't have been the case. I'm sure if I did some strength and conditioning, organized with a coach and everything, I can show up even stronger at a lighter weight. It's possible, no?
For sure, possible.
As you're cutting weight, you can maintain your strength, no?
As much as you can, yeah.
As much as you can. So you lose a bit, maybe?
I would say, yeah, it's inevitable.
But you still feel... Yeah, I mean, I felt pretty strong, but I psyched myself out more than anything else. I definitely got in my own head.
I see.
For that match. There's a lot of things that I see technically, tactically, that I can adjust and I can do. And then that's the mindset I want to keep as long as I can. Same thing with Janatas. These two guys, I'm sure I faced more guys on juice, but these two guys is insane amount of strength.
I see.
The strength I felt from them, especially when like they lock their hands or they squeeze, I'm like, holy shit, man.
Really?
This is insane. Yeah, like a wiry, tight strength. Guys my size too. Because I mean, I've trained with people that are on it, that are way heavier, and I'm saying, oh, they're heavier than me. Whatever. It's cool. But for people my size to be that strong, I'm like, holy.
That's when it hits you. Yeah,
that's when I'm like, fuck. So when I get off the mats, I'm definitely thinking about it. You know what I mean? But then when I relook at it, when the emotions calm down, I'm like, yeah, I could have done things. I could have put myself in positions where that strength isn't as prevalent. You know what I mean? Like maybe being on top, maybe wrestling in a certain kind of way, being more efficient, controlling the inside a little bit more. And then it just pushes me to adjust and then become better and then find little technical areas where I can improve and become better and quicker. So it's benefiting me not doing it right now. That's cool, because it's forcing my mind to think technique. It's forcing me to fine-tune things. At least that's the way I look at it. And it's martial arts, man. It's jiu-jitsu. Like how has jiu-jitsu become popular? In the early FCs, it's a little guy beating a big guy. So if I can, for now, keep working like that and then beat those juice monkeys and being a guy that started jiu-jitsu late, I think it's a big statement to like what you can do with technique.
I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think also like, I mean, like I say, you never know what's gonna happen. I'm still like, I'm turning 30 soon.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, turn 30 soon, July.
I thought you were younger.
Yeah, man, I sound like there's nothing. Yeah,
that's good though. Like in a good way. That's awesome. I like.
I mean, it's fine. I like when people tell me that. I try to be young on the inside. You know, man. Even if on the outside it's crumbling. You know what I mean? Physically speaking. But I try to keep it as long as possible. Keep that mindset.
That's awesome.
And then what about you? You think that in what you do, it benefits you not to be touching these things right now?
Well, yeah, in a perfect world, like competing in natural bodybuilding or competing in drug-tested powerlifting, then...
Oh, they drug-test in powerlifting?
I mean, not all powerlifting, but like what I'm competing in, yeah. So they'll have like an untested division and a drug-tested division.
Oh, they have They have.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and they hold separate records. So the ranking that I'm shooting for that would put me top 2 ever would be the tested rankings versus like
nice.
Although, dude, there's a lot of tested athletes that are like setting world records that are untested. And
tested athletes are breaking.
I know it's kind of confusing. So tested athletes are breaking untested records.
Boom!
Now.
I love hearing that shit.
Yeah.
And then that's physical shit.
Exactly.
I mean, I know there's technique involved.
So, and I just saw a podcast the other day. They're discussing like how prevalent are the benefits of steroids in X given sport. So, powerlifting, bodybuilding. We can talk about jiu-jitsu. Bodybuilding for sure, because it's very prevalent and apparent what the PEDs do for the bodies of the people competing on like a IFBB stage versus like a natural stage. You could take like a really good natural bodybuilder and put him against like an average bodybuilder that's on PEDs, and like you could see an immediate difference, whether it's how their muscle bellies look or like how dry they are, how vascular they are. In powerlifting though, it's ignorant to say that they don't help, but there's actually quite a few people now that are very young that have shown that like with good genetics and programming and work ethic that is actually prevailing over the people that have been taking steroids for so long. And why I think that is, it goes back to the conversation of people getting into lifting earlier with more information and then applying those techniques for longer. And then you have those genetic freaks that kind of come out of the woodworks that end up setting records that people that have been taking steroids for years couldn't. And jiu-jitsu, you know, I think that's I think that's relative to the individual. Like for example, you feel like somebody's grip and you're like, holy shit, you know. But then I think the steroids are complemented by somebody that has world-class technique versus like the steroids could work against somebody that doesn't. Of course. Yeah. So you're going against the guys you're going against, and those guys are world-class plus that. And it's like, yeah. So it's inevitable that would be a huge advantage versus somebody that comes in like, there's a juice head from LA Fitness and tries jiu-jitsu, then it would like work against them more than anything really. So yeah, I think it's interesting when you break down how much they actually like help in each sport. But at the highest level, not that I could say from experience, but I would have to assume that it makes a pretty decent difference. Yeah. You know, especially like if you're saying like you can feel like the difference from somebody that is and isn't. Yeah. So.
Oh, but it's a good point. You have to be good at you. I don't try to blame my losses on the fact that these guys are juiced or whatnot, because they're also good at jiu-jitsu. Right. There are things they do that are good at jiu-jitsu. It's not outstanding, but it's still pretty good technique. Right. And I feel like I can out-technique people, though. I'm at the right place. I'm with the right coaches, the right mindset and philosophy of training where I can get to that point. Over time, too, man, like people rush a lot. People want to get to the finish line fast. Yeah. They want a shortcut. They want to... I'm taking my time. I enjoy what I do, you know. I enjoy doing doubles. I enjoy competing. I enjoy that lifestyle. Awesome. Yeah. You know, if I find a sustainable way to do it and then not be addicted to things or have to use things and then be stuck with it for the rest of my life, I feel like the way I do it now it's sustainable. You know, I can do it. I can enjoy it. The results matter. Of course, I want to win, but it's not gonna ruin my life if I don't win. You know what I mean? That's really I definitely want to win. I dream about winning. You know what I mean? I wake up sometimes and I had dreams about winning in ECC and being in the venue and shit. And like I am inspired. I have the fire. You know what I mean? But it's also like I take my time. I know that it'll come long term. You know what I mean? You wait, and then John anyway says your prime as a grappler is in mid-30s, turning 30. I have at least 5 more years.
Do you think that also, like from your experience and the people that you're around, do you think that prime for grappling also carries true for people that aren't on gear as well?
I think so, yeah. I mean, for sure, like if you take from what I hear from teammates, former teammates, people that are on it, guys that are in my weight class, like over time, when you juice, you get stronger over time, like a compounding effect or something. So, of course, these guys are getting stronger when they reach their prime. They have that strength, too. But there's technique, too, man. You know what I mean? If you start relying on that and you forget all the little adjustments you can do with technique, then I don't know how far that'll take you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just something that I wonder about myself, too, because I've heard the same thing, like the prime for grappling or, like, the peak of grappling, like mid-30s or whatever. And I would wonder if that carried through for like everybody for the most part, or people that are only using, or like what the case is there. Obviously, you see people like Cyborg performing really well in like their mid 40s or whatever, but I think that's a bit of an outlier too.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, him technically, he's not really improving technically. When you look at Cyborg, with all due respect, he has 1 or 2 moves where he's good. He has like, he's tough. But he's only getting so much better at Jiu Jitsu. You know what I mean? So these guys, physical, a lot of physicality in their game. You know what I mean? If you add some tactics, you add some technique, can be done. Look at Cade. Cade is, I mean, obviously he started, it's similar to like those weightlifters that start very young with the right information. So Cade started very young at a good place, and then he beat Mika in the finals, who is on a lot of shit, clearly, from the test that he took. So it can be done. You know, it's been proven that it can be done. So why not try, you know?
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's important that those people like make it apparent that they are clean, you know, because it gives like other people like, okay, like the motivation that you can do it without. I think it's important for both ends to be honest, because like, again, you wouldn't want to think that you can accomplish something with somebody actually like assisting themselves with like PDs or whatever. But then at the same time, like, I think it's important to see people like Cade or yourself that are accomplishing a lot of great things without it, so that people are at least allowed to have the choice versus like only feeling like they have to go a certain route.
Yeah, 100%, man. People should know the truth, of course. Like, it can be done without, you know, people should, like you said, should always have the choice. Like, hey, maybe I don't need to. Maybe I can do without, you know, or like learn to appreciate struggling. Like, learn to appreciate those setbacks. Learn to appreciate like being in the game for longer. You know what I mean? Because that's what you're doing it for. You know, if you plan on winning something and then that's your only source of happiness, then when that high of winning comes down, what's next? You know what I mean? If you're not trying to consistently improve yourself in many aspects, which is why it's crazy you're focusing on so many aspects, man. That's insane, man. So if you have to give yourself like one piece of advice, let's say now you're 27, you look back and you got to give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be? Like, you look at like a Jimmy House when he was like, I don't know, 12 or 10 or 5. Young Jimmy House.
So I think the biggest lesson that I've learned over the last, you know, year, 2, 3, 4 years is really like, if you want to accomplish something, kind of like what we're doing right now, to a certain degree, you have to manifest that. And that can be done in a bunch of different ways. But a lot of times people will talk about wanting to achieve something, but then being ashamed of talking about it or vocalizing that in fear of what other people will think, or in fear of people thinking they couldn't accomplish that. It's like, I've gotten to the point to where me just meeting you last week, really telling you about my dreams of being in the WWE. I mean, I could leave the store, and I wouldn't think that you do that, but I could leave this room and you could say, what a fucking moron that guy is. And it doesn't affect me either way. But in the past, though, it would. And that's why, like, certain points, like, I want to do this with my life. I want to be able to help, like, train people. I want to be able to, like, not work a 9 to 5 and do this. I would, like, stray away from, like, telling people that. Maybe I tell my close friends, but I wouldn't tell the people that I knew for a fact would, like, shit on it, really. Yeah. And I would hide from that. But then I hit a certain point where I'm like, how are you really going to say that you want to do X, Y, and Z with your life, but you're afraid to tell it to a certain group of people? Like, you're being a coward, and you're not owning, like, what you really want to do and all these different things. So I would say to my previous self, or anyone watching, it's when you really identify what you want to do with your life. Again, you have one life, and if you're at an age like myself where, like, it's prime time to strive or something like that, the first step in order to do so is being able to own that goal or vision in front of anybody, whether you just met them, whether you've known them from 10 years, whether they hate you, whether they love you, like, just being able to tell somebody, hey, I want to do this, this, and this with my life, no matter how big or how outlandish the goal seems. Like, being able to tell anyone that was the biggest thing I think I had to overcome when I was younger. Nice. Was just the fear of what other people would think, because I started to realize that my goals started to go outside, like, the normal status quo of college to career to family and all that stuff, and I had to learn that, like, it's okay to have goals that aren't, you know, aligned with everyone else's, and above all else, it's more than okay to be able to own those in front of anybody, you know.
Well, I think by doing that also you'll reach that, you know, like that we talked about, those characters that the crowd loves because they don't care about what other people how they'll react. I think people really appreciate that. So I think that'll help. And then also, by the way, when you walk out, I won't make fun of you for running.
It's okay.
But
thank you, man.
My biased opinion, I think you should do grappling, man. 80cc, shoot. 80cc, you get a lot of eyes on you, man.
I think not doing it while I'm with the best team in the world would be a disservice to myself.
You should, man. At least like when there's like ADCC trials coming up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know when the Asians are. If you do a camp, ADCC camp, when the knee gets good, of course, I'm not telling you to rush and everything. Get the knee healthy.
I was looking to see if they announced it, but they hadn't yet. But I definitely want to do the trials. Absolutely. Some of the bigger
Asian trials should be like around December.
Is that the one that you did?
No, I do European.
European. Okay.
European for me is mid-September.
Where do they usually have Asian trials?
Australia.
Australia. Oh, okay, that works out then.
Australia.
Oh,
Yeah, man,
Cool.
go Australia. You know, kill some spiders,
nice.
fight some kangaroos.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be good, man.
Yeah.
It'd
No,
be
I
sick.
appreciate it, bro. Thank you.
Yeah, my biased opinion, of course. I'm a grappler. You know what I mean. I see how jiu-jitsu is growing from UFC, from how like WWE is helping UFC, UFC
Right.
helping grappling, and now Mo Jassim behind the ADCC is taking it to the next level. Even a good performance, a good like match can change your career.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That because you said you want to get on as many platforms and grow. I think ADCC is one of them for sure.
I agree, man.
That's my biased opinion, of course. I'm a
Mhm.
grappler, that's what I do. That's what I train for. That's my ultimate goal. I think you definitely can accomplish it too.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. And yeah, it's been a goal for mine for a long time, really. I mean, my goals have since like expanded, but that's always been on my bucket list to see how far I can go.
Last question. Do you feel like do you ever feel like because you have so much going on that you could benefit more by focusing on one thing?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. And so when I think about it, I think the obvious answer is yes. Like if I just committed all my training and time to just jiu-jitsu, I think I could do a hell of a lot for sure. I think a lot of the people I train with back home would probably agree with that. But at the same time too, the way I look at it is I like to think that I have potential in a lot of different things. So I'm not sure if later on in life, when it's all said and done, I would be content knowing that I gave up my potential for one over the other.
Better knowing.
Yeah, I'd rather know. And a lot of the niche that I developed for myself is, again, being able to perform very well at multiple things. And that's where, like, I can relate to somebody like you, not having done anything ADCC related, but you look at me like, oh, okay, like he does X, Y, and Z. And that makes it relative because we're all passionate and all very hardworking towards our goals, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And that's where, a lot of the connections that I've built have come up too, honestly, in the last year, like that podcast I was on, or the different connections I've made in my various travels this past year. Is like people seem to want to talk to me or meet me because of the various things I do versus just doing one thing. So it seems like, for me at least, like if I'm following God's path, it's like I am following these 3 or 4 main things, and people like to follow me because of that. So I think I should continue pursuing those to the best of my ability for sure.
Listen, man, there are no absolutes in life. I feel there's no absolute rule. There are obviously some absolutes rule in life, like you have to drink, you have to breathe. But for the most part, like if you make it work for you, man, you set a new standard. You know what I mean? So there's no absolute rule in life. If it's working out for you, man, keep it up. It's really nice to see. I wish the best of luck, obviously.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate
hopefully you can help me with that weighted pigeon stretch.
I'd be honored. Yeah, let's do it, dude.
Jimmy, man,
Thank
I hope
you.
we can have you back one day. Thank you for jumping on
Thank
the
you.
podcast when it's in its very early stages. It's like 5 episodes. This is the 5th episode.
This is awesome.
Thank you so much. It's great. I think it's the longest we've gone so far. Like what, 2 hours?
Oh, wow.
That's
awesome.
insane. I feel like if training wasn't in 30 minutes.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, man. On the contrary, it's good for me. I picked up on a lot of cool things. I hope the listeners too.
Oh, yeah.
We'll make sure to plug in the description the training. Of course, any jiu-jitsu guys, if you're not doing anything, do something. There's right there's a very good resource, and a lot of the things you talked about really go in line with what my trainer told me. And then I've heard a lot of BS from shitty trainers, and I can tell that you're like up to date with what's going on.
Thank you, bro.
And it's nice, and I will really give that. For me, the Nordic curls, I definitely got to get back to that when in stages.
Yeah, sweet.
The Nordics, and then the tibial. Of course, other things as well I picked up. But thank you again, man.
Thank you, bro.
Guys, you want to support the podcast, support Jimmy, support myself, subscribe, let people know, support, give us that good morale, get that algorithm going, and then we'll keep these amazing guests coming like that. So thank you guys, and then catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.